Welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Board of Trustees of the St. Helena Unified School District. I am Maria Haug, Board President. I would like to introduce my fellow trustees, Lisa Pelosi, Julio Olguin, and Jeannie Kerr. Also joining us this evening is our student representative to the board, Mr. Joe Brody. I would also like to introduce our district staff, Superintendent Dr. Mary Lou Wilson, Chief Academic and Human Resource Officer, Mr. Christopher Heller, our Chief Business Official, Ms. Andy Stubbs, our Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Governing Board, Ms. Erica Madrigal, and our IT Systems Analyst, Mr. Derek Machado. Providing translation this evening is Mr. Paul Huertas and Ms. Isidra Mencos. I would like to allow the translators an opportunity to explain how to use the interpretation feature on Zoom right at this moment.
Hola, buenas tardes. Estamos en la reunión de Santa Elena del Distrito Escolar de la Junta. Para unirse a la reunión en español pueden elegir la función de interpretación en Zoom. Pueden hacer clic en el globo terráqueo que van a ver a la parte de abajo de su pantalla y cuando se abra el globo terráqueo les va a dar la opción de escoger el idioma español y entonces van a poder escuchar toda la interpretación en español. Si ustedes están uniéndose a la Junta por teléfono, no hay función de interpretación en el teléfono, pero si están en Zoom, sí pueden escogerla. Gracias.
We are delighted that you are viewing on Channel 27, Zoom, or our YouTube channel. A copy of this board meeting video will also be available on our website at www.stelenaunified.org. In connection with closed session items A, B, and C, the board received information and provided staff with direction. At this time, I would like to everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, members of the public are entitled to speak on items not on the agenda. The instructions are on our board docs portal right here. They're being shown on the screen. So members of the public are entitled to speak on any item on the agenda either immediately after the item is called or during a public hearing on the subject matter opened by the board president. At this time, is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on items that are not on tonight's agenda?
There are no audience members who care to comment on items not on the agenda.
Were there any written comments submitted by the members of the public?
There were no comments submitted by the public on items not on the agenda.
At this time, I would like to call on our student representative to the Board of Trustees, Mr. Joe Brody, for his report. Thank you, Joe.
Of course. Good evening, trustees, district staff, and community. My name is Joe Brody, and I am the student representative to the Board of Trustees. My report tonight will be a little more brief and a little more general than you are used to, as the board can expect a full report on our four school sites in the new year. But as we all know, this has been a semester to remember. I often forget that we started this school year in an online learning model, and it's only been a few months since we transitioned, but our students are just to be back in an academic setting and to see students engaging with their peers and engaging with their teachers is, to put it simply, inspiring. Our students are able to connect in ways that were impossible online and are really able to elevate their learning, as well as the full online model was going. Just to be back on a campus is so reassuring after months of uncertainty and unsettling times. I was actually just talking to Trustee Curry. there would be days where I, wasn't really ready to get up in the morning to go to school. And now I jump at the chance to be back on campus. And just to see our students still reaching across all grade levels for that same success that they expect of themselves and that their teachers and community expect of them is amazing. We have first generation college students being accepted. We have students who are going on to whatever campus they may be on for the first time, and they are still striving for success, which blows my mind. It's just so wonderful to see. And of course, as you know, we are going on to winter break. It will definitely be an interesting transition into this new semester or just new year for our lower grade levels. But I know that our students they have proven to be adaptable, proven to be resilient, and they will continue to be so as we work into the new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. We really appreciate the students' perspective as always, and thank you for your words. They really inspire all of us. Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item? Were there any written comments?
No, there were no written comments.
Do the trustees have any questions for Joe? Okay, thank you, Joe.
President Haug, may I ask Mr.
Yes,
Browdy one
go ahead,
question?
Go ahead.
Any early notifications for college that you would like to share with us, Mr. Browdy?
I am happy to report that I received an acceptance to Fordham University in the Bronx Tuesday afternoon, which is very exciting. So thank you.
Congratulations, Joe.
Thank you.
So at this time, item 8A, we have our board member reports. One board member each month is asked to provide an update from their adopted school. And Julio Olguin will be reporting on the high school. Thank you.
It's always such a hard act to follow, but I'll do my best. Let's see. I went to visit Principal Cinto on December 10th, and it's been a while since I've stepped on campus like that, so I was actually really excited to just sit in his office and talk to him in person. So that was something we both enjoyed. We had a really good conversation regarding, so kind of what the update was about was WASC, so that's the accrediting commission for schools. So in essence, it's a gold standard of accreditation for high schools and higher institutions of learning. And for us, it shows that having this obviously shows that the St. Helena High School diploma means something and that there's value there. So it's important to keep this recognition or current. So again, looking at this process, it's really extensive. If you could see Ben Cinto's desk, it's all full of nice organized papers, but he was showing me that this is basically all it entails. It's a rather large document, and it has a lot of data, a lot of information that goes to it. It includes a self-study or a school self-evaluation. It also includes visits from WASC representatives, so it does take a lot of time and effort and energy. And so, again, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to acknowledge Principal Cinto and Vice Principal Fetters, who I've kind of taken on this challenge of preparing this document. And again, during this really crucial, challenging time where I know that they're using a lot of their time and energy trying to keep the school open. So I appreciate the fact that they're moving forward to complete this. Again, he shared, it's a rather large document. So the two goals that we kind of reviewed were areas that were evaluated 3 years ago, and one of them was closing the gap around subgroups or like English language learners, special needs students. And the other one that we really kind of talked a little bit more in depth over was the continue to improve academic achievement in mathematics. So being a school board trustee, we all know that over the last few years, that was one of the areas of emphasis that the district was looking to improve. And so he basically showed me through this document about 18 to 19 different, bullet points detailing exactly what they've done to improve this. And some of the data that he would talk about the interventions, proving that they are benefiting students and that the math is improving essentially. And so again, that's also in part due to the math department to really just accept that challenge and to do that work. So things like the intervention teacher, the math task force, the math labs, the big ideas curriculum, the operation wraparound, those are just obviously to name a few, but overall just to see that all in this document is very impressive, and it's very reassuring that if our district has an area that needs improvement or is challenging, that our district can basically put a plan in place and show those improvements. So that was great to see, and so I think it's something we should also celebrate and acknowledge it, especially like the math department has made this turnaround. As far as a school visit, I also had the opportunity to pop into several classrooms. And again, just what Joe was stating about the students being engaged, just observing how happy kids are, and teachers are still maintaining that level of engagement. So I think it's important to understand that these times are very difficult and challenging, and students are adapting, teachers are adapting, and it was just good to see how everything's going in the classroom. So that was it for my report.
Thank you, Julio. Now we're on to the superintendent subcommittee reports, item 8B. We had a board policy meeting, and Lisa, were you there?
I can provide you an update on the board policy meeting.
Okay.
You have noticed in the agenda there are several board policies in there and ARs as well. But in relation to the board policies, rather than reviewing them in detail, because there's a lot new, there's a lot of reading for all of us to do, my suggestion, recommendation to all of you is to approve those policies that the committee stated that they say to adopt in its entirety. The ones that have the notation of further discussion or research or information is needed before a decision is made, I would concur with that based on what the subject matter is on those board policies, that we hold those off until January and have more of a voracious dialogue on some of those when those come back to us. So at that point, that would be my recommendation as we get to that part of the agenda, is to follow what the committee says, and then again, be prepared in January to have a more in-depth discussion on those particular items that are going to come back to us. Dr. Wilson, is there anything else you would like to add?
I think you captured it perfectly.
Thank you, Trustee Pelosi. Business operations, Jeannie?
Yes. Good evening. So the business operations meeting was on December 9th, and it was not as well attended as the first meeting, but certainly as interested as the first meeting, if not more. Ms. Stubbs guided us through the revenue and expenditures of the district, kind of where we're at, the percentages of where revenue sources come in, the percentages of the expenditures in its different categories. She explained how the basic aid, community-funded schools work. We're a basic aid district. And then we went through the budget, and this is something that will be on the agenda further down. And it was a presentation with a lot of explanation, and the business services committee has provided a recommendation for us, for board members, and you'll see that when we do when Ms. Stubbs does the presentation.
And that was a unanimous recommendation.
That's correct.
Okay. Moving on next to the Monrovia Group. Trustee Olguin or Pelosi?
it seems like it was so long ago. And was reading over the notes, and I realized that so much has changed in that month's time, from the November 17th date that's written on here, that we were talking about the hospital getting ready to open soon. Well, obviously the hospital is open now, so that's great. But I think one of the two highlights from that particular meeting was that Mayor Ellsworth had discussed and told us that the city council meetings are now in Spanish for the community. So I thought that was something that was well worth noting. And I think the other thing too that was noteworthy was Mayor Ellsworth talked about the equity, inclusion, and diversity project that's the city is combining with Mr. Cinto and the high school. And, that's already been underway and starting to roll. And the city is really excited about that. So that, to me, were the two big takeaways from that meeting.
And then I'll update. We did have one this morning.
Right.
So that didn't, if you weren't able to attend, but similar. I mean, we just had updates. We didn't have a huge amount of participation, but we had the city, we had the chamber, and myself, and then the district. So overall, just the updates from the city were just the message kind of from the city was just encouraging the community to remain strong through this the new county stay-home order. So just kind of committing to staying home and just following the protocols through the rest of the next 2 months. They reiterated as far as the local businesses, in particular the restaurants, just encouraging our community to support that sector. And then also to the Mayor Ellsworth was talking about the district and really how grateful he was for our schools to be open and in person. He just thinks that it's a stable platform, and that it's important to have this our schools open, and that helps the city function better. So he was really grateful that we're doing the work here to stay open. As far as the chamber, they emphasize again all the work that they're doing around helping local businesses again through these challenging times. And then I'm going to just do a shameless plug real quick on the Napa Valley Give Guide. That's to support local nonprofits. So again, local nonprofits are doing a lot of work as well, and a lot of nonprofits are struggling to provide services. So this Napa Valley Can Do Give Guide, which the organization that I'm a director for is participating. There's also 57 other nonprofits. There's an opportunity to donate in the month of December, and so we're hopeful that there's already a lot of donations coming in, but we are also looking for support for those the nonprofit sector as well. So I think that was pretty much it.
Thank you, Julio. And the LCAP Steering Committee, that was attended by Joe, Lisa, and Jeannie. And that was back in November.
Mr. Brody, would you like to speak on this?
I know that was. It feels like such a long time ago. I wanted my first meeting, and then we also had our new student representative to the LCAP committee, Audie Novak. It was also her first meeting, and then I had to leave early, so that is all that I have to report.
Maybe you can help me if I forget something. So and it does seem so long ago. I mean, there was some smaller committees that were set up to put together the questions for the student learning centers, or circles, yes, the student panels, and also some questions and kind of format for a parent forum. And so that was discussed and agreed upon as kind of how do we move forward. Lisa?
Yeah, I think that, we did spend a lot of time talking about the student panels, the upcoming ones in February, and then we did spend a fair amount of time circling back to the equity, inclusion, and diversity project that's going on, and again, in collaboration, school and the city, and it was in Mr. Cinto's report for tonight as well. He talks about it and how it's moving along. So I think that's kind of a fired up kind of topic that's going on, and we're going to probably hear a lot about that in the coming months as well. So, but the LCAP, steering committee is one of those ones where we say it all the time, but just to reaffirm to everybody, that is the nuts and bolts committee of what drives this school district, and the student voice is always a welcome in addition to that. So I applaud for having those voices on there as well.
Thank you, Trustee Pelosi, and I apologize to the board for not being prepared for that one. I was not prepared.
Thank you. And calendar committee, Julio?
Yes. So in case you didn't think that this committee existed, it does exist. I was a witness to this. So no, to be honest, this was actually a really good committee to be on, just to kind of get a perspective of what goes into it. I know it seems like it's pretty easy to mark down the days of, spring break and winter break and all that, but there is actually a lot more that goes into it. So I do want to acknowledge Chris Heller, who made this kind of a smooth and collaborative experience. And overall, the feel that I got, it's attended by teachers, administrators, and students, some parents and school board and myself. But I think overall, the drive of the committee comes from the teachers, administrators, and students, which I think is kind of where it should be, because they have that unique perspective of how the calendar should be designed. So I appreciate all those that gave their input to do that. And then just overall, I mean, the timing of the committee proves even more critical. Obviously, we as a district, we've gone through the fires and the power shutoffs and the cancellation of days because of smoke, and now with the pandemic. So I think that designing these three calendars for the next 3 years, there was definitely a focus and an importance on the recovery days, because I think that it is tremendous benefit for our students, knowing that if we do lose those days, that we can potentially make them up. And then I think it's a highly important to parents as well. So I also want to just thank teachers and the staff for their willingness to really just put their students' learning first and just really being flexible with these recovery days. So overall, like I said, it was a good experience to understand how that works. And I know the calendar, which we'll review and approve right now in the agenda, but just understanding that a lot goes into it to plan and to get it approved. So thank you.
Thank you, Julio. Now we're on to St. Helena Teachers Association. Mr. Farrell, do you have anything to report?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm pretty sure.
Yes, we hear and see you.
Okay. Just want to just give an update as we've been here in-person learning for 6 weeks now, and a lot has gone into it. I have to give a shout out to all of our teachers, actually more than a shout out. I got to really be thankful that I work with such a professional teaching staff, and I want to commend them for all the different challenges they've been able to face over the last 6 weeks as we've transitioned into in-person learning. Not everything has been super smooth, but most things have worked itself out because of some working relationships we've had with the district office, Dr. Heller or Mr. Heller and Dr. Wilson and Andy Stubbs, and then all of our principals have done a great job of managing a tall task in having our schools open for in-person learning. But I really want to take this time to thank our teachers and also thank our CSEA members and their help in the process, because it's truly been a team effort. And that's really what I want to focus on. But thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. And we echo those thanks to all our teachers as a board. We'll be thanking them multiple times throughout tonight, I believe. And then we do have a written report from the CSEA. I would like to remind trustees that is a written report. And we're on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Wilson.
Yes, good evening, and thank you. I had the opportunity this week and last week to visit all 4 sites over the course of the week, and I just am in awe of the work that's being accomplished to support our students. whether it's in the office or the cafeteria, playground, in the classrooms. All of our employees are doing everything it takes and a little bit more to ensure that students have the opportunity to engage and learn. And in addition, we know that the classroom looks different today. The collaborative seating, the flexible seating, all of the work that we move forward to come into this world of technology and working together, it does look different. And yet, every classroom I walked into every day, I was seeing our teachers creatively identify methods and strategies to support students talking about their learning and to support collaboration and engagement. And so really want to acknowledge and applaud all of our employees for their accomplishments over the last not only 6 weeks, but since March of this school year and the previous school year. Also wanted to let you know that in grades 2 through 8, over the winter break, every Monday and Tuesday, students who have been identified as benefiting from intervention will be working online with some of our teachers. So through all of this work, we have teachers who have volunteered to work during the break. And parents and students have been notified, and every Monday, every Tuesday, students will receive some intervention services in the area of ELA and ELD. Really excited to be able to offer that for our students. Also during the holiday, our food services team is stepping up again, and they will continue to provide meal kits on Mondays and Wednesdays of all of the weeks of the holiday, here at Vintage Hall only from 8 to 9:30. And remember that those meal kits are for any child under the age of 18, 1, 2, 5, 12, 17, and any student who's enrolled here at our high school. Really important work. And again, our food service team, it's their holiday and they're working extra hours to serve our students because it's so important that everyone have access to food. Do want to remind everyone again, Mr. Holguin spoke about the recovery days in the upcoming calendars. At the board meeting last month, you approved and were informed of the recovery days for this calendar year. So February 11th, March 15th, and April 12th will be student days for our students in this school year. And that is on the district website. Easy to find if you need to see that again. Classes do resume on January 6th. We have a minimum day for our students tomorrow, and I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We now have the written reports from all 4 schools. Do we have any comments on the school reports from any of the trustees? Okay.
No, just appreciative of the information and the
Yes,
updates.
I would
Absolutely.
urge everyone who is watching to please read our reports from our principals. It really gives a great snapshot of the work that they're doing along with their staff and what options are available to students. For example, I'm really happy to announce that we have a Spanish language acquisition app now called Imagine Learning for our primary school students. And something like that is a great tool that can be used over the winter break if students choose to do so. And please take advantage of all the options for learning over the school holiday that our district has for you.
President Howell, could I clarify with Ms. Allen that that is primary and elementary access?
Thank you.
That is correct. It is primary and elementary.
Thank you. Thank you for primary and elementary students both. So we are moving on to item 9, which is the annual organizational meeting of the board. And this is something that only happens normally once every 2 years. We swear in our board members and they take the oath of office. So Trustee Kerr will be joining us again for another 4-year term. And we have a new board member, Trustee Minter, well, he will be Trustee Mittner as soon as he is sworn in. So I invite them both to come forward, and I will be administering the oath of office to both of them. So you will repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Welcome,
Congratulations.
Trustee
Welcome.
Mittner.
Thank you.
So I'll give you a minute to get yourself set up there. And we will be turning to a few other items soon. The microphone, the green light shows when you are ready to speak. And I'll just let you say a few words of introduction to the community and the staff and the students who are attending virtually tonight.
Hello, my name is Forrest, and I have gone to the school district here. I graduated in 2011, and I'm very excited to be here. I'm very passionate about education.
Welcome, Forrest. Now we're moving on to item 9C, the nominations for board president. Is there any nominations for board president?
I would like to nominate Maria Haug for board president.
Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to approve Maria Haug for the position of board president?
I'll make that motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Motion carried.
Thank you,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It is odd to ask a motion to approve you for, anyway. Moving on to item 9D, election of the board vice president. Do I have I call for a nomination for the board vice president?
I'll make a nomination for Trustee Pelosi for vice president.
Is there a second? I'm sorry. Is there a motion to approve Ms. Pelosi for the position of board vice president?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Lisa. And that vice president position can be very important because sometimes you serve as president when the board member cannot serve as president. And now we move on to Nominations for board clerk. Do I have any nominations for board clerk?
I would like to nominate Trustee Olguin for board clerk.
Are there any other nominations? Do I have a motion to approve Trustee Olguin as for the position of clerk?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carried.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Julio. So now we are moving on to the board meeting calendar for the 2021 school year. Approval of this calendar will set the dates for regular board meetings from January 2021 through December 2021. We have, in the past, we have met the second Thursday of the month with several exceptions that were always exceptions. So we always met the third Thursday in June. We always met the third Thursday, usually around spring break time. And then there was just a lot of exceptions. So we have suggested to move the meetings to the third Thursday of the month for the 2021 school year, which will remain somewhat consistent. However, it has come to our attention that the March meeting would be possibly better served to have that during the second Thursday of the month. And Dr. Wilson, I would like you to clarify to the board, especially Trustee Mintner, why that is the case.
Thank you. Yes. And Ms. Madrigal did check our calendar, and the second Thursday of the month is available, and there would be no conflict. There are some time certain, date certain items that have to be approved by our governing board prior to the March 15th date. And so the March 18th date is problematic in that regard and would require either that we move that meeting, as I am suggesting tonight, to March 11th, or add an additional meeting to your calendar. And while we unfortunately do have to do that on occasion, we do have plenty of time at this time where we could make this change now and move forward without that conflict. So as you look at this calendar, it would be my recommendation that a motion be made to approve the calendar as written with the change of March 11th, 2021 for the regularly scheduled meeting in March.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item, Ms. Madrigal?
No, there's no public comment.
And trustees, are there any further questions?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the 2021 board meeting calendar as presented, with the exception of the March board meeting, which will be held on March 11th, 2021?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We're on to item 9G. This is the superintendent subcommittee assignments. We have one board member who has been with us an extremely long time that left, and I would like to just, it would be remiss of us not to say thank you again to Mr. Conwell, who served on the Board of Trustees for such a long time through so many ups and downs and changes, and he was always there steadfastly by our side. And his name, it's so strange to not see his name up here anymore, but we are going to be reassigning subcommittees. There are a couple that I will, as board president, I will serve on student discipline, And then we're going to be balancing out the committees a little bit more among letting Forrest take some active participation in a subcommittee that will help him in his new role. So maybe I could, Trustee Olguin, do you want to start with the subcommittees that you would like to continue to serve on, or a new one that you would like?
Yeah, I think for me, the ones that I'd like to continue on are the Equity, Climate, and Culture, and the Monrovia. And although I just joined the Wellness and I was waiting for a year for that, I think I can move to a different one. And I think I'd like to do the board policy.
Okay.
It's supposedly a very fun,
Okay.
entertaining meeting, as I was told. But I'm open to anything else that.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you, Julio. And Jeannie, would you like to?
You know, I'm fine staying where I'm at as far as my subcommittees. However, if Forrest would like to have, he can do the first shot before me. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Forrest, go ahead.
The ones I'm personally most interested in would be the curriculum subcommittee and the equity subcommittee.
Okay, Forrest, great. I think that there's usually room for 3 committees. Is there another one that you feel sometimes as a new board member, well, any of the other.
Since there's a vacancy on the board policies committee, I can just take that.
Okay.
I think I was going to do that one. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm stepping
Okay.
down from wellness,
Okay.
so if
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Okay.
If you're
And I
stepping
think-
down from
We'll
wellness,
work
then
it out.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
would-
Lisa,
okay.
you're signed up for 5 committees, so I think we were gonna.
Yeah,
we were
exactly,
gonna give you
yeah.
a little balance there too.
I would
So-
very much like to stay on board policy for a little while
Okay.
longer because I feel like I'm just finding a groove in there a bit.
Okay.
I will, but I would stay on wellness. That always interests me quite a bit. So what else? I will give up the equity, climate, and culture and let Trustee Minter take that. And what are the other ones? The Monrovia group. I could stay with Monrovia. Did somebody else?
I kind of was interested
okay,
in
you take
Monrovia, if that's
That's great.
okay.
You take that. So where else does that leave for me to be then? Where do you? I'm sorry, I'm just losing track here a little bit.
So you are currently, let's see, you're currently on LCAP as well.
Yes.
And
I would be happy to stay there, actually.
okay, LCAP, I think that would be.
LCAP board policies.
So LCAP,
Monrovia.
policy and wellness
Sure. Or again,
for, and then we have, and Jeannie, are you going to stay then on curriculum, technology, and innovation?
I can unless somebody else wants to
Okay.
be on that one. That's either way is fine. I'm able to do anything. Willing to do anything.
Well, we can leave you there if you'd like. And then, let's see.
President Haug, maybe I can help you. I have a chart here
Oh, okay.
that I'm working
Okay.
through. So currently, we still have 2 seats on the business operations.
Yes.
Previously, it was President Haug and Trustee Kerr. And we still have 1 seat on the county representative, which is not, that we just need 1 member on that. And currently, that is Trustee Kerr. And then the LCAP steering, we still have 1 seat. Previously, that was Trustee Pelosi and Trustee Kerr, and currently Trustee Pelosi is serving there. The school calendar doesn't meet frequently, and in fact, may not be meeting for a couple of years. And that committee had trustee Conwell and trustee Olguin on it. And then finally, wellness still has just one trustee Pelosi. So if you'd like me to go back and go through one at a time.
So I think what I was seeing possibly was a space for trustee Mintner on wellness committee. Would that be an interesting committee for you? That is,
Yes, I'd be interested.
that is our food service as well as our social emotional wellness. And so that, I
So
think that's,
that then gives trustee Pelosi, Olguin, and Minter 3 committees.
yes.
And trustee Kerr right now, although I know that you're willing to do any of these that you are listed for, currently I have you committed to 1 committee.
I think she said originally that she was okay staying on everything that she was already on.
Okay.
So that, is that correct, Jeannie?
That's correct.
So Jeannie and I will remain on business operations. Jeannie, you're still okay with county representative?
Yes, I am.
And then curriculum, technology, and innovation for trustee Kerr.
Curriculum, technology, innovation has trustee Minter, and yes, you're right. Trustee, you're absolutely right, Kerr.
Yes. And then LCAP will be trustee Kerr and Pelosi.
Okay, give me a moment here because I think what we're doing now is shifting the number of 5 from trustee Pelosi to trustee Kerr.
That it's going to be 4 with the county
With the county,
representative.
and and the county is, there's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're comfortable with that, trustee Kerr?
I am, thank you.
So we still have,
We have calendar left. Now, are we going to be meeting, and should we be putting names in there? in
I
case
think
we
that it's
do
important to be
need to meet?
proactive and have names in the event
Okay.
that a meeting is needed.
Okay. So right now we have 2 vacancies on school calendar, which is a I could take one of those so that it's balanced out because it's, again, student discipline and that will probably not be meeting very often.
I'll take, I would be happy to go on school calendar.
Okay, so it'll be me and Lisa on school calendar.
Ms. Madrigal, do you have it all?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So should we go over one last time, or are we okay? Policy is Julio and Lisa. Business operations, me and Jeannie. Monrovia will be me and Julio. County Representative Jeannie. Curriculum, Technology, and Innovation will be Forrest and Jeannie. Equity, Climate, and Culture will be Julio and Forrest. LCAP will be Jeannie and Lisa. School calendar will be Lisa and me. Student discipline is going to be me. And wellness will be Forrest and Lisa. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I apologize for all of the parents who are watching and had to sit through that. Okay, and then now we are going to discuss and confirm the assignments for the Adopt a School program. St. Helena High School is currently trustee Olguin. RLS Middle School is currently vacant, and then trustee Kerr is currently at the elementary school. Trustee Pelosi is currently at the primary school. Trustees, I'll let you start with you, Lisa. If you would like to change, just let your fellow trustees know. If you're happy where you are, just let them know.
How long have we been on these assignments? Just 1 year so far?
Usually we stay on 2 years, and I think we've only been on 1 year on these assignments.
Right.
I think
That's what I
Julio
thought.
might be the only one that's been at the high school a little bit longer, because we all had students at the high school.
Correct. Yeah, and so know that I'm perfectly happy to stay with the primary school, but if Julio would like a swap, I can now go back to the high school since I am only have alumni. So again, I'm perfectly happy where I am as.
Julio?
Yeah, I can move. I have two of my boys in middle school and one at the primary school, so I would be able to do the elementary school. So if you want the high school, and I don't know if you guys want to switch, just because I know usually they don't. They prefer us to be where our kids aren't. So the only one I would be able to do is the high school or elementary. So I'm open to either switching or.
Trustee Menjo, what would you like to do?
I'm personally most familiar with the high school since I went there the longest. So that would be my preference, but if it's easier, I can go to RLS because I did go there too.
I'll take whatever is left. I'm fine with.
So Julio,
So I'll
Julio,
step down
would you like
from-
to switch to the
Yeah.
elementary?
So I'll go to the elementary, and then Trustee Pelosi can take the high school, or unless you, or however you guys want to figure it out.
Or else Forrest might be interested? Yeah, Forrest, are you interested in the high school?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then Lisa and Jeannie, do you want to switch? Which one of you would like the RLS?
Elementary school, so, oh, you're going to that.
Yeah, that's the only, yeah, because I have
I've already
kids in.
done RLS, Jeannie. When was the last time you?
I would be happy to do RLS.
Okay, then you do RLS and.
Are you happy to stay where you
I
are?
am so happy with those little kids, it's great.
Okay. Do we have all that, Erica? And then again, I apologize to our parents who have to listen to this discussion, but we have to get through it in public. We can't meet otherwise, according to the Brown Act. Next, we're on to item 10, the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is, I'm sorry, my laptop is not catching up with me. Here we go. The consent agenda contains routine items judged as appropriate to be acted upon in one motion. If a board member requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda item, it will be discussed under action items. Is there anyone online who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item?
There are no public comments on this item.
Were there any written comments on this agenda item submitted by members of the public?
There were no written comments submitted.
Trustees, do you have any questions with this agenda item?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and my comment is for the approval of the personnel register. And it's just a huge thank you to all of our employees for always stepping up for our students. So, and you can see this right here with the interventions that we talked about earlier and the subs and things that we are employing. So thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you for bringing that up, Jeannie. And the whole board, you speak for the whole board, and we thank all our staff for the work that they are doing right now, especially now. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Next, we have item 11A, the board report on the CSBA Annual Education Conference. So this was the conference that we all attended recently. And we have asked each board member to report out on 3 main takeaways from the conference. Lisa, would you like to start, please?
I'd be happy to. I think one of the things I've learned primarily about myself or this conference is I much prefer it in person than I do online. So again, hats off to all of our staff and students who are having to learn that way for months on end. So I think one of the number one big takeaways that I always find with this conference is it's always a sigh of relief and a feeling of pride when you realize that St. Helena is doing a lot of these things that you sit in these sessions and you realize, oh yeah, we know about that. We do that. That's where we've been doing that. So that's always a really great feeling to know that that's that we're there, that we have staff that seeks these solutions, ideas, and topics out, and they're already in our district. I think one of the first the general speaker, Jamie, I think it was something Doran, and I apologize, I can't remember his name, and he talked about generational differences. And I thought what was really interesting about that session was, particularly being an older board member and trying to understand, who your demographics are generationally that make up your school district. And a parent who will now have a kindergarten, is a different generation than I am, and understanding that mindset and how their student is learning will be different from, of course, my students that went through the school district. And what I found really interesting about it was how that those particular parents at that that'll be one generation behind me, that the way they're getting their information is completely different how I would have expected to get my information. And it made me think about, which we've talked about before in the past, was the presence of social media for that particular generation of parents who like to get their information that way. And, we've vasculated back and forth as a district whether we wanted to ever have a social media presence. But it was very much a pro argument for doing so, because that was the way that particular generation was choosing to get information about their school district. They also talked about the benefits of conducting a survey of the generational demographics of your district. So as board members, you could identify the sectors of your stakeholders and make technology decisions and curriculum decisions and extracurricular decisions based on those demographics. And I just thought it was a little bit thinking outside the box. I didn't know what to expect from that session, but I found it to be food for thought for sure. And I think, I sat in on a couple of other ones. One was about communication, engagement. And again, it just talked about investing heavily in listening, particularly in this school year, and all the challenges that it's bringing. And then I attended one on innovation in the arts, that San Gabriel Unified School District was the presenter. And it was amazing. It was just talked about how they doubled down on the arts during COVID, and what kind of engagement that brought and what it brought in their testing performance of their students, because the arts became so prevalent in the curriculum during online and, in-person learning since they went back in person. So that's kind of my highlights.
Julio, would you like to go next?
Sure. And I'm similar to Trustee Pelosi, that probably this year more than ever, I missed that experience of going to actual conference and just being, seeing other boards and other district staff members all in one place. It's inspirational, that experience, to see that many people that are working to make public education successful in California. So that part again was I didn't think that I would miss it as much, but I definitely did. And but I feel also to the information, even though it was through this platform, it was still pertinent, and I got really good information, and still found myself to be learning something, which is always important. I just primarily I wanted to highlight one session that I attended, and this was and that I felt was inspiring and beneficial to myself, was governance with an equity lens. And I know as a district we have been talking about equity, and we've done a lot of work around it and kind of what it looks like within our district. And so kind of one of the big takeaways that I got from listening to the speakers was just the equity is a little more complex, and it also requires looking at racial equity as part of that equation. And so for me personally, I just think with the work that's happening here in the city, and just the time and history that we're at with, the racial inequality and social justice piece, I think it's just something that it's an opportunity for education to look at that system and to look at what that looks like now. And so I just wanted to highlight some of the advice that I thought was inspirational for board members, and it was reassuring and validating to my own experience as far as what I've been working with the city with the racial piece and social justice piece. And The first one was just about staying engaged, and so that to me just refers to being courageous with that work. I know that this conversation is sometimes very challenging. And as far as my own personal experience, I just feel like the more I talk about it, the more comfortable I feel. And it's important that we agree and that we can stay engaged even when it does get uncomfortable. And so I think that was one of the big lessons that I took from it, that it's important to keep the conversation going. The second one was to just to be open to experience discomfort. So agreeing that part of the growth is that's when it happens, when you have these uncomfortable conversations. And that's really what's going to continue to push the work. So as a community, as a district, I think it's important. And then third, probably the most important one, and one that I've realized just within this experience of working with the city and talking with, I know Joe's been working on this, and Principal Cinto and some teachers that have been on those conversations with the city around this topic, is just speaking your own truth. And I think that's important to identify that and to understand that we all have a perspective, we all have a story, and I think everyone needs to have the opportunity to be heard and have the opportunity for others to listen. So I think that one just really struck a chord with me as far as the work that I feel like I'm doing and trying to grow more into. And then the last one, which I just think is important, is just expect and accept non-closure. So understanding that this is a journey and that it's not going to happen over, 1 year of talking about it or putting things in place. I just think it requires everyone to do their part, and so that was really the big takeaway, is that just we all have a role in the system. She mentioned that we're all educators or in the education system, and so it's a system, and in order to make these systemic solutions, everyone has to do their part. So I was inspired with that, and I know that the district has been doing a lot of this. Like Lisa says, when you hear certain things that the district is doing, I did get a sense of pride that we're moving in the right direction, but I feel also with the movement, with the community and everything, it's just a good opportunity to kind of revisit and dive a little bit deeper into what equity means and what it looks like, and have our community understand why it's important. So that was my big takeaway.
Thank you, Julio. We'll just go around the table to Jeannie.
So thank you. So I echo the Trustee Pelosi and Trustee Olguin's thoughts about attending this as a virtual conference. It's much like our students, I'm sure. It's much more difficult to stay engaged in the long term. It was a conference that lasted all from 9:30 to 3:30 for 2 days, and I could tell by the Friday, I was like, wow, now I understand what it feels like as a student and as a professional teaching, and it's very much more difficult to when you're on a Zoom call, not to have that collaboration around you and not to have people around you and questions being asked, and just having the things that we used to take advantage or not for granted, and that weren't there. And Trustee Olguin, actually, that's the one I was going to talk about, was the equity one. And it is, I mean, and I just wrote it down quickly, is just staying engaged, experience discomfort, speak your truth, expect, accept, non-closure, and for me, the most important is this is a long-term project and it needs to be sustainable. So, and it's something that I feel very, very, very pleased and very, as a district, feel very fortunate that we're in a district that we're talking about this, and the city's included in it. I mean, we're all talking about it together, and I think that's really important. There was also a workshop that was LCAP. LCAP for English language learners, kind of, what to expect and what you might want to consider as far as the upcoming 3-year LCAP. And there was a couple of things that really stuck with me. It says the question was which strategy should be included in the 2021 3-year LCAP to address learning loss by English language learners, and it was rethinking of what we do differently, and also thinking deeply how we can transform our schools. And why that stuck with me is I kind of at this place right now where we've always, we're always looking at the classroom and how can we make the classroom different and better and more collaborative and all of that. But additionally, what this whole pandemic and sheltering in place and distance learning made me realize is that there's other options of looking at our classrooms, where it's actually now we're actually able to be teachers and learners anywhere we go. I mean, and so it kind of I think in a way it's going to kind of change the platform of education a little bit. And certainly the general sessions were always very inspiring, and I really enjoy the speakers, the general sessions. And I just want to thank the district, and I'm saying the district, all of us, in the sense of where I feel very fortunate that we're able to do these conferences, to go to these conferences, and to be learning. And we not only we learning, but we're kind of teaching others as we're talking about it. And I know that our district has always gave opportunity to all of our staff to go to conferences and things, and it's looking different this year and possibly even next year. But as we get through this pandemic, we're going back strong and continue with conferences and workshops and things, because I know that I know that you really learn a lot and you really bring back a lot into your classroom or into the district, like these conferences.
Thank you, Jeannie. And for Forrest, it was your first conference, and it was virtual. I mean, normally we go to a conference where we have a general session with close to 5,000, if not more than 5,000 board members in one room, hearing a speaker up on a stage with huge presentations of mariachi bands and all sorts of student performances. So it was a very different conference, but it was your first one, so you don't have anything to compare it to. So please, what were your takeaways?
I am very glad that I didn't have to do that in person. I honestly had a very contentious relationship with the General Assembly speakers. The last speaker had nothing to say that related in any way to education. He was only talking about his experience being on Hamilton, which if you like Hamilton, that's fine, that's great, but that was not what the point of the conference was supposed to be. As far as the other General Assembly speaker, I felt like I learned a lot about what to avoid and the assumptions we make about millennials, because first of all, he spent a lot of time on the millennials are entitled trope, and he explained it as, well, boomers taught millennials to be entitled because they said that millennials should have a better life than the boomers did. But what parent doesn't want that? And the things that we get criticized for in terms of being entitled, a lot of them are just things that our parents and grandparents had that we were taught to expect. And so a lot of those things have now been taken away. So when we ask for them because we've been taught our whole lives that we were supposed to have them, suddenly they're not there, and everyone is blaming us as if we're the bad guy in this scenario. So that kind of riled me up. And I really did not like his take on that. Other than that, I mean, I attended some informational seminars that were interesting. I learned a bit about the importance of ventilation and how hybrid learning might actually be beneficial to students, because even if it's not reaching dangerous levels, insufficient ventilation in a classroom with too many students can cause buildup of CO2, which makes them drowsy. And I can definitely attest to that drowsy feeling in class when I was in high school. So those were my takeaways from the CSBA.
Thank you, Forrest. So,
President Haug, Mr. Browdy attended as well.
oh, I did not know that, Joe. I thought you were going to be unable to attend because you had classes.
No
I'm so sorry.
worries. We always find workarounds to class. Yes, I had the, also my first conference had the distinct pleasure of being a part of the student board member program, which was led by representatives from CASTLE, which is the California Association of Student Leaders. And off of Trustees Pelosi, I tend to piggyback off of your ideas, but it was very exciting to see presentational points in the student board member program. And I'm like, oh, we can check that off the box, looking at diversity, going green, really empowering the student voice, civic engagement, things that we are already working on. But it was also a really amazing opportunity to connect with student board members from around the state, and really just visualize and be able to see that common sense of purpose and that unity, that we're all working towards the betterment of students. And I'm hoping that this is a great minds think alike moment, but I also attended the equity presentation, and again, looking at the conversations that we have in our student congress here at the high school. And it's exciting to see that our small little town is having these discussions and really ready to topple these systemic issues. And then I think the presentation that I took the most away from was looking at community partnerships, which being such a small, tight-knit community and district, it's what we really rely on. I think about the Up Valley Family Center and the relationship that we have with them and the support that we're able to provide students. And so really just reminding me that we need to continue to work to increase our partnerships wherever we may find them in our community for the betterment of not only our students, but our staff and the greater public.
Thank you, Joe. I do have a few takeaways that I'm going to mention. I did attend a seminar on distance learning for English language learners. And what I realized, my big takeaway, and I knew this, but it really hit home during all of these presentations actually, is, and I'd like to point it out to our community, that St. Helena is one of the very few districts that is not in complete distance learning in this state. There are so many distance learners that have been in distance learning all throughout the year and will stay in distance all throughout the year. And it's the majority of students in this state that are in complete distance learning. And so some of these seminars that we went to, a lot of it was about all the challenges that are being faced with schools in distance learning that don't have Wi-Fi access for all their students, that don't have laptops or iPads or any electronic devices for their students to do their distance learning. So that was my big takeaway in a general sense of how fortunate we are as a district to actually be able to have in-person learning for the majority of our students who want it. I think that our town should really realize that we are one of just a handful of districts that are in-person learning in this state, especially 5 days a week for the amount of hours per day that we're in. For a district of our size, we are basically, I believe it's the top maybe 10% or 20% that has as many hours per week in person as we do. So a lot of the seminars that I went to, it was talking about the challenges of distance learning, and it's really difficult for a lot of school districts in our state. One other thing that what I took away from the English language learning seminar is that there was a survey done, and it found that 25% of non-English speaking households receive communication only in English in their school district. Well, we've been translating things into Spanish. as much as we can, all communications for parents. And I would just want to really thank our translators tonight. Again, I would like to thank Paul and Isidra for translating, and you are an integral part of what we need to offer to our district, to our parents and our students. I did also attend the climate change task force presentation, and again, it just reiterated that we're doing things that other districts are recommending that we do. We had our green initiative back in 2015. We updated it in the spring of last school year, and we're doing exactly what other districts that are models are doing. The third one that I attended that really stuck out for me was leading change in times of crisis. So I guess this would be considered a time of crisis because we've dealt with the fires and the pandemics, and they were just talking about the pandemic. So we've had that in addition. So it was helpful in setting up a kind of a framework to look at how you lead during a time of crisis. At first, if you look at it at 3 stages, the first stage would be triage, when you're just trying to get through the day to manage the crisis, which was basically where we were back in the spring of last school year, where we just were day to day. We didn't know what was going on. We shut down. We didn't have anything in place. And then you go from that triage phase of just managing day-to-day crises to the transition phase when you are putting into place the framework to move through the crisis. And then it's important, they said, during this transition phase that we look forward to where we want to be, the transformation phase. And what I found was helpful in looking at the 3 stages was, if we're looking at this transition phase that we're in right now, if we look at what we have gained through this crisis, what we can take forward with us to where we want to be, there's things that we have learned. So you can look at it as horrible as it has all been through for all of us, for teachers, for students, for parents, for all of our support staff, for all of our community. We have learned things. We've learned things that maybe we would have not learned before that will maybe be something that can help us in the future. Something like maybe we could have virtual parent night education meetings. That might be more convenient for people. They don't have to have a sitter. They can do a Zoom meeting. There might be benefits to having some of our superintendent subcommittee meetings on Zoom once in a while if that works out better. It might increase attendance. Things like that you can look at what we're learning right now and what we can take with us to the future, where we're beyond the crisis and where we can look forward to a better place than where we were before. So I thought that was kind of an optimistic way of looking at it, kind of compartmentalizing what we're going through right now, to realize that we did get through that first horrible, just kind of day-to-day, put out this fire part of the initial. We're now in a place where we can transform our environment and look forward to a future where we can work together. And again, it was the big takeaway is that it's amazing what we have done as a district, that we are in-person learning to the extent that we are. And that is because of our teachers, our staff, our administrators, our students, and our parents, who have all followed the rules. And we are a very lucky district because most districts are not in this position. And that was the big takeaway that I had. So, and I did not ask for public comment on this item. There wasn't, was there?
There was no public comment.
Okay, I do apologize. And Mary Lou, would you like to share something as well?
Actually, I would like to request that we take a break. We're having a few microphone issues.
Okay.
And prior to that, I could share that Trustee Minter and President Haugen and I participated in the new board orientation the first day of the conference. And so we did spend the full day with a number of new board members across the state learning and growing together. So thank you for your commitment to attending the conference, all of you.
Thank you. So we will be taking a short break and coming back in 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
It was very loud last night. Paul was like, I gotta go upstairs. Congratulations, Joey. That's amazing. I know. I mean, we toasted and we did our thing. I don't know if you saw the other photo of like my makeshift. I did. Recycling this St. Helena High School graduation decor. I think it came in handy. I'm so glad I hung on to it. But he talked about, kind of a letdown since they weren't doing anything, virtually or otherwise. It was interesting because Jeannie was saying that they did a small virtual graduation for her son last night. But I don't know if Joey's college might have been too big, maybe there was just too many people. Yeah. But it's okay. You know me, I played pomp and circumstance. I made him walk around. Walk down the stairs. Yeah, exactly. And it was, Paul's like, okay, it's really loud. That's right. Did you hear about that? He's just like, trying to read my book and, me and Paul. I know. And I know Evelina said she was going to do a drive-by and she also did that. Oh, okay. That's great. They would be welcome. You can sit in you get a park up, you can sit outside. Wonderful. With a blanket. So are you feeling pretty excited about that Florida news? I know, right? Just to know.
made it home safely, correct?
Yes, yeah, she's been doing her 5 days since last exposure quarantine. She'll be tested tomorrow. So we have been,
She's in the guest house.
she's in the guest house
Oh.
and stays there.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Mia's going to Santa Rosa to get a test tomorrow. It's
Yeah.
the only place.
I think Claire's going to maybe Vallejo,
Okay.
maybe somewhere.
Yeah.
Not.
Thank you for rejoining us after our break. We now are on to item 11B. That's the adoption of Resolution 20-16, District of Choice caps for the 2021-2022 school year. And I would like to call on Dr. Wilson.
Yes, thank you. Board members and school community, you know that District of Choice is the method that we use to enroll students that live outside of our attendance area. And annually, each year, I bring to you the enrollment caps during the month of December. What you'll note on the enrollment caps this year is, if you remember them from last year, is a fairly significant change in the enrollment cap. That's the column in the center for the transitional kindergarten 10, kindergarten 40, and so on. I am recommending that we do lower the caps this year for the 21-22 school year for a handful of what I believe are really important reasons. The pandemic has created quite a bit of volatility, and when I say that, in all areas, specifically for us as a school district, enrollment and predictability. So I'm concerned that our class sizes would grow potentially to a size that would require additional staff. Trustee Kerr mentioned that she participated in a conference around learning loss, and we are providing some intervention during the winter break. When we move into the 21-22 school year, I want to keep class sizes as small as possible so that our teachers and our students have that opportunity to continue to meet the needs of every student that lives within our boundaries and that is attending our schools at this time. We also currently have 5 teachers who are typically assigned a specialist assignment, 2 academic intervention teachers, and 3 of our primary elementary specialists, music, Spanish, and B-STEAM, that are assigned a classroom this year, a multiple subject classroom. They're teaching a particular grade level. That teamwork allows us to have the smaller class size that we needed for the COVID-19 capacity. And as Trustee Pelosi mentioned, the arts are really important, and we want to get those specialists back to work in their specialized fields, and the academic intervention teachers working with all of our teachers and students to support the needs and the learning loss at the primary and the elementary school. And then finally, as mentioned earlier by Trustee Kerr with regards to business operations, we know that we are looking at a potential change in our budget in the upcoming years. And while I know all of you have a heart for students and you want students to join our schools and participate as much as possible, financially, it could potentially be a strain on our budget. You know that over the course of the last number of years that I've been with you, the District of Choice process has changed dramatically and has gone from where we would get about 75% of their average daily attendance or allocation for local control accountability districts, I'm sorry, local control, LCFF funding. Excuse me. So Napa Unified, we get some funding from the students that join us. At one time, it was 75%. It's now down to around 25%. So district of choice is very unfunded, underly funded. We are spending much more on the district of choice students than what we are receiving from the state to serve them. So I do believe at this time, given the uncertainty of our budget, that it would be efficient and prudent for you as a board to limit those caps for the 21-22 school year. That being said, you also know if you approve these caps today and later in the school year we identify that we have openings and we have the funding, I can bring caps back to you and open the caps to a higher number. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions and discuss this with you further. I do recommend the enrollment caps as they are projected on the screen for the 21-22 school year.
Is there any public comment on this agenda item, Erica?
Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? There's no public comment.
Was there any written comments submitted?
No written comment submitted either.
Trustees, would you like to start discussing this? Because this is a big issue for us.
So yeah, I'll start. We say this often, and we know that it's true. We, as a school district, we are a business. We are a business, and if we are we possibly could be seeing some reduction in our revenue coming in because we are a property tax-based district. We're not sure what those numbers look like, and we won't know until probably February, March, April of next year. I think it's really prudent for us to really consider that when we're looking at our caps. And for the reasons that Dr. Wilson has given us, I agree with it. I mean, I hate to say that because it's low cap size, it's really low, but it's what we need to do this year. And it doesn't mean that we don't, it can change in the future. But right now, I think that it's what we need to do. And it saddens me in the way just because I know that we want our classes to be lively and, with a lot of collaboration and things, but for this next year, I think that we need to be really careful in what we do as far as our spending.
Dr. Wilson, do you have any inclination or feedback of how this may be perceived by teachers union? Overall by staff, and I mean, obviously it's public here for people to look at. Have you received any comments on?
I have not had any comments from the teachers union or any teachers with regards to the lowering of caps at this time.
Okay. I mean, I also, with that divided heart, like Trustee Kerr, obviously, we want to share what we offer here with as many people. But I do think the learning loss and the small class size is going to be a instrumental in the next school year. And I think right now that is serving students best, and that's what we're here for, and serving the students that we have so that they can get the interventions that they might need to get more one-on-one, to get them back up, I hate to use that cliche phrase like back up to speed, but, to get them where we feel like people are back into where they want to be. And we do have budget concerns to flush out, and we won't know that. And I think it would be a bit naive of us to think otherwise, that to bump these up in any way, shape, or form without knowing how we're going to pay for it. That doesn't make much sense. So at this point, I support what your reasonings are for these caps at this time.
President Howdick, if I can also clarify for our board members in the community, this in no way impacts any current District of Choice students. Absolutely not. All of our District of Choice students that are with us will stay with us through their last year in school with us.
Very important to clarify that, Dr. Wilson.
And also, maybe just to clarify for parents who may be new to board meetings and not know the program, this does not affect students who are living within the district at all. This is, we could have many more students in one grade that are living in the districts. All those students are served by us.
Absolutely. All students that live within our attendance area, we serve. This is students who live outside of our attendance area. You've seen the charts before: Calistoga, Napa Unified, Fairfield, Vallejo, Santa Rosa.
Okay, and Julio, and Forrest, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a difficult situation. I know as a parent, you obviously want what is best for your student and your child. And I know that this is a district that's highly sought out just because of the class sizes, the quality of teachers and everything that goes around it. So I totally understand, the aspect that families want to come to this district. But I'm also in agreement in terms of kind of the uncertainty moving forward and just the strain that it could cause moving forward for the students that do pertain to the district. So as much as it, saddens me to kind of do this, but I think it would be, it's important for us as a board and then the district staff also to be mindful and be projecting and looking out as far as what the potential scenarios could be. And then, and definitely, I mean, it's reassuring, obviously, that none of the students that are within our district of choice now would be affected. And then, as Superintendent Wilson alluded to, potentially, if there is space and funding available, that would be something that we could open up again. So, same thing, I'm in agreement with the recommendation.
I just wanted to say there's also the health ramifications to consider if we have larger class sizes, considering the current pandemic.
That's true. That's because we don't know where we're going. We still don't know where we're going to be in August when we open for the 2021-2022 school year. There's still a lot of uncertainties out there. I concur as well. My major concern, and it's just a reality that we all have to face. We know there's a lot of learning loss this year. And a small class size for the next year, it could be the cornerstone for our learning loss recuperation strategy. And I think that it's going to be critical for our students for the next school year to have small class sizes where teachers can really give them the attention in a hopefully a normal classroom setting. To make up for the difficulties that we faced and challenges that we faced this year. Is there any board member who would like to make further comments? Joe, do you have something to say?
I'm just going to agree with the sentiments of the board in that given the situation with public health and also our financials, I think it is best that we really consider these caps.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution 20-16 District of Choice Enrollment Caps for the 2021-2022 school year as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. So moving on to item 11C, we have review and consideration of approval of board policy updates. I'd like to call on Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Pelosi, for talking about the board policies and the work that's been accomplished by the team in the last number of weeks. There are a large number of policies, and they are primarily recommended updates, changes to the law. And you'll recall that while we note the administrative regulations within our summary document, you do not need to vote on those. The administrative regulations are what our staff uses to enact and ensure that they are following the policies that you you approve and put into motion. There are a handful that we have noted that we will be looking at in the later months, taking it back to the Board Policy Committee in January, and then bringing them forward to the board at a later time. Some of those may require some small committee work, some work with teachers around homework, work with board members with regards to the one having to do with medications. All of the staff that participated in the updates are available to answer any questions on any specific policy at this time. And I do recommend that the board policies are approved as presented.
Ms. Madrigal, was there any public comment, or is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There was no public comment submitted. There is no public comment requested at this time.
Board members, do you have any questions or comments for the staff or for Dr. Wilson?
I'm just going to thank the policy committee because they do a lot of work on this, and it's they each take different sections, and they're very well versed on what they need to know. So I just want to thank them for the time because this was a lot of work to do this round, especially.
And the summary document is excellent. It's when I first saw that, I was like, oh boy, and then I saw the summary document. So yes, so thank you for the entire board policy committee.
So just by way of explanation, even though CSBA does write policy recommendations, we always have to go through them very detailed and see how they pertain to our district or whether they're relevant or not, and we may have to make adjustments accordingly. So thank you to everyone who put this work together. Do I have a motion to approve the revised board policies as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Next, we have item 12A, consideration of approval for the 2021-2024 academic school year calendars. I'd like to call on Mr. Christopher Heller.
Great. Good evening. Trustee Olguin mentioned quite a bit of the work that was done on the academic calendar committee earlier. We met 4 times in the fall, and we discussed a number of the factors and considerations needed in the development of this 3-year calendar cycle that's proposed this evening. Mentioned were the composition of the committee, students, teachers, parents, classified, a well-rounded range of interests and constituents of our school community. And a survey was proposed to collect more information from teachers and students about some of the areas that we had some dialogue and discussion about what would be the best action areas to move forward on. And they provided us some responses that worked within our framework of keeping in mind that we had 182 school days and 186 certificated work days. And that's one of the big considerations in the calendar is your start and end date and then all the days that fall in between. So I'd just like to highlight some of the points on the calendars that are pretty consistent between all 3 years. Is that there's a continued 1 week Thanksgiving Thanksgiving break, a 3-week winter break, which is different than the last 3-year calendar cycle, which had a 2.5 week break, and it was an overwhelming response to bring the 3-week winter break back. And so you'll see in the calendars that there were some considerations that we needed to add additional days back into the spring. We have a 4-day President's Weekend in February, which is consistent with calendars of the past. And also consistent is the spring break being the first full week in April. So that's been something that we implemented the last 3 years, which allowed families to plan around the first full week and have it be consistent instead of moving around with traditionally the Easter holiday wherever it falls, because it does move. And so you'll see in the calendars also too that we were able to attach 3 local holidays as a basis of trying to make things work in the calendar with our days, as I mentioned, to add up to 182 days and 186 days, that we were able to attach the spring break and other holiday points as needed. And these days in the spring do give us that flexibility to re-encumber those if we have fire, PSPS, smoke, other types of events that might require us to close school, that we could use those as potential recovery days. So a lot of work went into this committee, and a lot of great discussion about things people had interests in. And again, for whatever reason, it turned out to be a very positive committee. There wasn't a lot of animosity or any, I don't think any point where we had any points where people were unwilling to work and find resolution. So I think it's just a great example of people talking through different points of view to arrive at a conclusion that brings these 3-year calendar proposals to the board this evening for your approval.
Thank you. Was there any, and is there any public comment on this agenda item, Ms. Madrigal?
There were no written comments submitted. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Mr. Farrell?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, as I was on a member of the committee too, thanking Mr. Heller for a smooth process. This calendar committee can be quite an ordeal sometimes, and Julio caught a good time to be on the committee. Specifically, my members that participated, Leah Zumwalt, Missy Pritchett, Jennifer Ellenson, and then Sarah Hurdell did a lot of work collecting a lot of information that made the process very smooth. So I want to thank them.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment? There's no additional public comment.
Trustees, any comments or questions?
I picked a good time to be on that committee, it sounds like.
So I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated in the committee. I'm glad to hear that it was relatively smooth. I have been on that committee when it was a less smooth or bumpy, I could say. I just want to again clarify for our parents that we are building 3 days per year into our calendars for the next 3 years for those possible days where we might lose days due to fires, smoke, or power shutoffs. And we have had to close, we have had to lose days in 2 out of the last 3 years or 3 out of the last 4 years. I'm trying to think right now.
2017, 18, 19, and 20.
Okay, all 4. It was all 4 years. Okay. Thank you for reminding me. I was hoping that I was not forgetting any, but I guess I had. So it's something we deal with every day. Other states have snow days. We have other reasons. So is there a motion to approve the 2021 to 2024 academic school calendars as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have item 13A, presentation on the learning continuity and attendance plan, focus on social and emotional learning. I'd like to call on Mr. Christopher Heller.
Great, thank you. So as we do every month, we provide an update on the learning continuity and attendance plan. And again, this is a 1-year plan that replaces the local control accountability plan. And this month, we are going to focus on social and emotional learning. And so it'll be provided mostly by Mary Allen, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and our principals as they navigate through their slides. I would like to also, before we get into the slides, oh, I'm doing it, no wonder. Okay. I'd also like to point out in January, we're going to have a presentation on learning loss data, and Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mary Allen, and I are working on that right now. And we hope to have some data points not only from our district, but also nationwide, so we can kind of take a look at how much the impact of COVID-19 has affected our students across the United States and our own particular students. So that will be, this will be our last report, and then we'll start moving into the development of our LCAP, as you could see in the months of 21 coming up, 2021. And so with that, I will turn it over. Uh-oh. Am I pointing at you, Eric?
As Chris is turning that over, good evening, board members and Dr. Wilson. So as Chris is getting into the next slide has to do with what is social and emotional learning and why do we do this? And so we're going to get into that just briefly, and then the sites are going to talk about what they're actually doing in reference to strategies. But what is social and emotional learning and why do we focus on it? It's just like academics. We teach academics from year to year. We also intentionally teach social and emotional skills and competencies. And we base it on what they call the CASTLE framework, which is what you see on the right side of the screen, which has to focus on self-awareness, self-management, decision-making, relationship skills, social awareness. So we are constantly intentionally teaching these skills from year to year to year, because the ultimate goal is that when they leave the school site, they are productive and healthy citizens in this world. Next slide. Why does it matter? It matters based on several pieces of research. These are just a few, but what it ultimately shows is that not only are we dealing with academics, but we're dealing with the whole child. And when you deal with the whole child and you progressively work on intentionally teaching these skills, we will see long-term impact in reference to increasing academics, decreasing conduct, decreasing emotional distress, and decreasing drug use. And then you can read all the other ones, but it has a positive impact on every student when we focus on social and emotional skills. Next slide. This is often referred to as soft skills, and this just gives you a slide of what some of the major employers in the United States state about what they're looking for in their employees. Once they leave the school system, ultimately, we want them to be productive citizens. And this is what you're seeing from some of the employers. It's all of those soft skills that there are actually competencies that you can teach, and there's a way to teach this. Next one. And lastly, before we get into the sites presentations on what they're doing, is that parents often, and we see this on several of our surveys that we've done over the years, we ask parents, what do you value the most? And as you can see, it's we want our child to be happy and not overly stressed. That seems to be one of the main characteristics. And this is a nationwide survey, and we're seeing it across the board. Parents want their kids to be happy, and they want them to be emotionally happy and well. And that's why we focus on this, and we intentionally teach it. We have a curriculum, as well as all the multiple factors that we do at the school sites. And we are going to start off with the primary. Ms. Sangranetti.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here tonight. Just quick, I wanted to talk a little bit. I have on the bottom, if you can see, some of our, Ms. Sabin has provided some social emotional resources for our classrooms and for our parents and for our teachers. These are the virtual classrooms. And every classroom has a social emotional section on their virtual classroom, which includes calm down corners and other resources like that. And let me just start. And we have the kids start with a daily check-in. Very simple. Just how do you feel today? And what do you need? Those are the feelings we really want kids to, we want kids to be able to identify how they're feeling and be able to name it and then ask for what they need. And so every day our school starts with a community circle. And we also focus on, Mary talked about the 5 core competencies. Those kind of guide our how our community circle runs. And teachers also are using the second step as a curriculum to help specifically teach those core competencies. Again, classrooms have a virtual calm down corner where kids can identify how they're feeling. We have like virtual glitter jars, virtual things like that. But we also have in-person learning calm down kits. So kids at their desk have like thinking putty. They can have timers. There's lots of little things that this year, because of the pandemic, we required them to have individual calm down kits. So next slide, please. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the school-wide emotional support. Mary talked a little bit, well, I don't know yet. I think all the we have school-based counseling support. Dana Saban provides some of that. We have community-based counselors for our Tier 3 students. We also have something called a Calm Down Corridor, and I have some pictures up there on the side. And kids, if they're feeling like they need a break and just can't sit anymore, we have something in front of our office that kids can go through and do jumping jacks, breathing, different kind of activities just to kind of get their wiggles out and just take a break from sitting. We also know that young children really need predictability. And so we spend a lot of time on rules and protocols, and I think that makes them feel safe. We have parent resources on every classroom, virtual class as well. And lastly, our next step would be to expand our parent resource room and really also expand in the sense of providing Spanish language social emotional parent resources. So that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Again, also thank you for having me here to speak to this important subject. One thing I'll highlight on this slide is that it's really important for students to start to learn how to understand their emotions and ask for help when they need help. So one thing we do is we have students and teachers gauge how every student's feeling every day using a 4-quadrant emotions chart. That also includes a survey where students can ask for help if they need it, and teachers will respond to it. Thank you. Next slide. Nice. And this one's great. It shows a number of our resources, and they're all linked to live links. So you'd be able to look to see more information. The emotions chart on the left actually has a link to the survey that students use. And then Mary Allen referenced Second Step as one of our curriculums. You can see some scope and sequences up there at the top. And then the California Social Emotional Learning competencies are linked with that looking like a bullseye in the middle. And then over to the right, finally, is a example of how we'll have students sometimes learn how to calm down and become more prepared to learn. And in this case, they can use that as a spinner that will help show one of 6 different activities they can use to calm down. Thank you. Now I'll pass on to Corinne Cox to talk about RLS. Thanks.
Whoops, I thought I unmuted and apparently I didn't. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. At RLS, we are working on social emotional always, and especially right now when so many children are struggling. One of the things that we offer is Up Valley Family Center, which is an amazing partner to our district, offers P parenting classes that are aimed specifically at parents of teenagers, which can be really challenging time. We also have, it says here, 2 Up Valley family therapists working with 29 students and a 3rd to be hired. And I'm very, very pleased to say that we did hire the 3rd therapist, Gina Cortez. She already is working with an additional 6 students on top of the 29. They are either working virtually with students or in person. Due to one of the positive side effects to working with them virtually is that the therapists are now working much more closely with the parents and families of students because they need to call the homes or go to the homes, and so that's giving them more access to parents. We also work with Aldea, which specifically is works with students who are affected by drugs or alcohol, and then Terry O'Leary is an amazing resource to our students. She follows individual students and parents and provides all kinds of additional support to students and families. Can I go to the next slide? And then focusing on some of the specific, more curricular activities that we do to support social emotional health is each morning begins with what we call wellness, and that is daily guided breathing exercises that every student does for the first, just a couple of minutes of each day. They're announced, they're given over the public address system, and everyone participates. It gives people an opportunity to start the day in a more calm and prepared way. So some of the themes are listed. They include focusing, positive thinking, anxiety reduction, goal setting, and so on. And then like Tanya and Tamara, we also use the second step curriculum. During distance learning, it was provided weekly in PE. And right now we're working on an in-person mode so that we have so little instructional time right now that we're trying to come up with a good system. It is in the process. Teachers are committed to providing it. And it's really important. It's difficult for PE teachers because they don't have an indoor space to easily work with students right now. And then lastly, we did survey all of our 6th grade students since they've never been to RLS before. We wanted to know how they were doing. And so we specifically focused on connectedness and safety. And Erica, if you'll go to the next slide, I'll quickly show you some of the responses that we got. It was absolutely adorable. These are quotes from students. When we asked them how they felt about it, you can see that the vast majority of students were very happy to be at school. Think it's amazing and love it there. And we were also concerned with students' daily routines and how they're functioning during this challenging time. And again, students feel for the most part as though they have a grasp on what's going on. They understand what they need to do. They love being in person. They feel safe and are really, really happy being at our school. So we were delighted to get those results. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Ben.
Good evening. So much like Corinne, we are continuing our counseling services with Aldea and Valley Family Center. And when I met with the counselors before the start of school this year, we strategized how we were going to continue providing the excellent counseling services that we do. So one of our main focus was to make sure that we do not pull kids out of instructional time, given that that's already been compromised in terms of quantity and to some degree quality. So this is where the either free first or free 8th period has afforded us an opportunity to meet with students in person as well as virtually. So you'll see there in terms of the main highlight how we're conducting appointments with both students and parents. This was shared with parents as part of our webinar before we came back to in-person learning to make sure everybody knew how to access the supports that were needed. Next slide, please. When you have the opportunity, if you haven't already, I believe Dr. Wilson shared this out when we sent it out originally. But Sean Garrity and Terry Linder worked with library media specialist Susan Swan on creating a LibGuide, which, you know, a lot of times it's, you know, people are not always available, and sometimes it's just finding the resource. So they curated a bunch of resources for students and parents for them to access, including an app to help students. But I think that was such a wise move on their part in terms of making sure students had access to it when they needed it, because, you know, students spend, you know, 3/4 or whatever percentage of their day outside of school and don't have access to those supports. So we wanted to make sure that they had something at their fingertips. So if you have the opportunity, please check that out. Next slide. And lastly, much like RLS and with Mary Allen's support this year, we, our PE department adopted a social emotional curriculum that you see there. And luckily, it also provides assignments in English and Spanish. Those two at the bottom are linked. You can see a sample activity that the PE department utilizes in their courses. Again, it is challenging because there is not a dedicated space, but when they go in the gym on rainy days, those kind of things, it makes that learning easier to facilitate. I'll also say, it is our sincerest hope, knowing that, Corinne kind of hinted at student connectivity. We know at the high school level that connectivity pays dividends, both academically, socially. So our hope is at some point during this year, if activities and athletics can continue, because we know that for a lot of kids, that is their connection to school. That is their connection to other supporting adults on campus. So it is our sincerest hope that we can get back to that. Anyway, thank you.
Is there anyone who wanted to have any public comment, or was there any public comment on this agenda item, Erica?
There were no public comments submitted, and there is no public comment now.
Do the trustees have any questions or comments from our presenters today?
As always, thank you for all of this information, and I think that the links are fabulous. I've gone through a lot of those links, and there's a lot of information. So if you have a moment to look at them, it's great, trustees. It's good information. Thank you very much, everyone.
I would also like to highlight the parent information night that we had. Mary Lou, could you review that for us, please?
Absolutely. And Ms. Allen, if I miss anything, please fill in for me. Yes, last Monday evening, Mary Allen and a number of agencies, partnerships that we work with, presented a virtual meeting where each agency spent about 5 to 7 minutes talking about the services that they provide. Boys and Girls Club, App Valley Center, Aldea, Ole Health. Mary, you can help me with that piece. It was recorded and it was presented in both Spanish and in English. As you mentioned earlier, that silver lining, this kind of meeting, it will be posted on the district website, and so parents and students can access it at any time and learn more about services that are offered to our community. Ms. Allen, anything you'd like to add?
Just want to add that the other agency was Parent Can, which deals with families that have students with some disabilities. Yeah, other than that, it was a wonderful night, and we have so many wonderful organizations helping this community all over Napa County and willing to step in and step up. And there's a true partnership happening right now. And if there's any silver lining that's happening during the pandemic, it's that everybody has come together for the good of the students and the good of the families. And I applaud all the agencies and all the efforts that they're putting into it.
Thank you. Board members, any other questions or comments? Julio?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment and also just acknowledge that the district I know has been talking about social emotional learning, and I know Andy and the Health and Wellness Committee have had mental health on the radar for a long time. So just knowing that we've kind of not necessarily been preparing for this, but just understanding that it is a big importance, and now more than ever we're seeing the effects of the pandemic and how that's affecting us. And so it's important that not just our students and staff take care of themselves, but also parents. I mean, a lot of parents, I imagine, didn't get this kind of social emotional learning, so it is important to learn it if you don't know it, because it's a way of supporting your kids at home. So I'm open to reviewing this stuff and learning this information, like I said, to support students, because it is important now that it's being taught, and how you can kind of help your children at home through this process. So thank you.
So as I was spending time with this agenda item, I was thinking, wow, how lucky we are, because we have the resources and we have the staff and we have the district that's committed to social emotional wellness for our students and our staff. And it just kind of just weaves everything together, because I think next to learning loss being a hot topic for the upcoming school year, it's going to be coupled with social emotional wellness, and that's part of our LCAP, and then it's a priority. And as Trustee Olguin just said, the Wellness Committee, I mean, we at our last Wellness Committee meeting, we spoke a long time. We didn't even really get through the whole agenda because it was all about social emotional wellness for our students, for our staff. But I just looked at this and thought, wow, there are so many resources, and I'm just grateful that they're out there for people to find if that person is not available, if there's not a person available to them. But I just find that all these things are going to be so interwoven as we move forward in the next, the next year particularly, coupled with small class sizes that we're able to offer to our stakeholders, that we'll be able to hone in on our students and help them through these programs that we offer. So I say bravo to us is what I say.
So just as you were speaking, Lisa, I realized we are also providing wellness programs for our staff that are virtual throughout the pandemic. I really want to recognize what our staff is going through, and we're trying to provide supports to you as well through the virtual. I believe there's been some exercise classes and other more physical well-being classes offered virtually this year. Again, Julio, thank you for reminding us that our parents can take advantage of any of the services that are offered through the Family Center and the parenting support programs that we have. Joe, would you like to comment?
Yes, and I would just like to commend the staff at each school site, not only for robust programs at their own site, but just as I was clicking through this earlier today, just the continuity and the flow of resources available to students at each school site just creates a really strong foundation. And just looking at just appropriate resources and just continuing to build on that from the primary school all the way up into the high school. So I'd like to commend the staff at each of the school sites for building such a strong continuous program.
So I know that sometimes we have more parents and community members watching these board meetings during these difficult times. I would like to remind you to, if your child needs support, please reach out to their teacher, to their principal. Our staff is there to support every child. We want to support every child. And sometimes we might not know that child needs the support that we can offer them. And we really are here to help you through this difficult time and to help your child through this difficult time. So please speak up and take advantage of all the resources that we offer. Is there any further comment? Okay. Just thank you, everybody. Okay. So now we are on to item 13B. Update on in-person instruction.
Yes, good evening again. This report has shifted from a basic COVID-19 in that trauma area that you talked about, and now we are in that transition, and so we are updating you on instruction tonight. And myself, Ms. Stubbs and Mr. Heller will present some information for you. So by way of public health, county public health, I think all of us are keenly aware of the case counts within the Napa County and within St. Helena, and I appreciate the city of St. Helena now posting on a daily basis the actual case counts here in St. Helena. You know that they are significantly lower than in some of the other areas of the county. Recently, Governor Newsom modified the monitoring system, and we were notified as a county yesterday, I believe, that we were being moved into a more conservative shelter-in-place order. And that's all based on the ICU bed capacity, not only within our own county, but truly within the state, because the hospitals do work together across the state. One of the interesting aspects, or really important aspects to understand about the ICU capacity is that it's not necessarily the total number of beds in a hospital. It's the number of staff members that can work those beds and serve the patients. And so from any one moment in the course of a week based on shifts, there might be 5-bed capacity, there might be 10-bed capacity. It really is based on employees, and you know that our essential healthcare workers are growing weary and are tired. The additional restrictions that are closing restaurants, closing, limiting access to retail stores and whatnot, do not impact schools who opened to in-person instruction prior to these shelter orders. And that's us. So we're very fortunate that our students are in person and that these orders do not impact us. And in fact, in working with Dr. Reluccio and listening to public health officers at the state level, and if you look at our COVID-19 case data, which is on the district website and updated once a week, you will see that our case counts are very low. Our students, as mentioned earlier, and our employees are following the rules and maintaining distance and wearing their masks and washing their hands. And so we've created a really great environment for our children to learn and grow. We are continuing to be required to adhere to the California Department of Health and the Napa County guidelines. And at this time, as I said, there is no additional orders for us. That could change. Our public health officer could determine that she wants all schools to go to remote learning, and she could name that executive order. Our governor could name that executive order as well. And then with regards to the guidance that is currently in place that we must follow, I would like to remind the board and the community that if any one of our school facilities has a case count of 5% or more in a given time period, and that's all of our employees and the students combined, that would close that facility and move it to remote learning immediately for 14 days. Because we only have 4 schools, if 25% of our schools are closed for 14 days due to COVID cases, then all 4 of our schools would close for the 14 days. And in our community, that really does make sense because there's so many siblings across the schools. So Mr. Heller and Mrs. Dondero, our school nurse, and then Brandon Romero, our intern that we have working, are monitoring those cases really closely and keeping a great eye, along with office staff in contact tracing. So we may have to move to remote at some time. Mr. Heller, would you provide us with an instruction and human resources update?
Yes, thank you. So this slide kind of captures, we're at the end of our 6th week of in-person instruction tomorrow. And this is kind of capturing some of the things that have occurred in the past 6 weeks that I think are relevant to share. And thinking about reopening school when we did in November, we had a model where we had students in person and in distance. And some classrooms experienced more students in person and fewer in distance. In some classrooms we had a very small number of students in person and more in distance. So it kind of fluctuated depending on the grade level and in different classes where we had numbers of students in person and in distance. What has been successful is our students and staff compliance and wearing masks and adhering to distancing. I think it's been very successful in the fact that we have no reported cases of COVID contact on campus to where the virus has been known to be contracted by a student or an employee on campus. So the fact that we all follow rules and that we have this compliance has really made it a successful journey for us in the first 6 weeks here. In addition, we're required to provide testing to our staff at least once every 8 weeks. And so we've come up with a schedule that does provide staff an opportunity to get tested on site. And you could see that this was as of December 9th, and we had 86 staff members tested on site. And I just learned today in speaking with our intern, Brandon Romero, that this past Tuesday we had an additional 30 employees get tested prior to the winter break. So you could see, if I did some quick math, that 86 plus that 30 plus the other 30 that have brought in a negative test result from doing testing on their own. That's about 146 employees, which I would guesstimate about 75% of our staff have gone through this. And again, it's not required, but you could see that our staff's commitment to getting tested and providing those results to ensure a safe environment has been successful. And then one of the other concerns that obviously that human resources will have is the availability of substitutes as we enter the winter season and we are in the COVID surge. We were able to contract with substitutes to have on campus to provide supervision for our COVID tents, as we call them, in case there's a on-campus issue with a student or a staff member that needs to isolate, as well as having an on-campus substitute to float around and make sure that there's coverage in case there's a last-minute emergency that involves a staff member not being able to report to work or having to leave early. We have eight folks that are available for that type of coverage. And I'm happy to report too, since this was developed, this slide, we have re-upped that agreement with those particular employees to continue through the end of February. So we have them on site for the next 2 months, which is good to have, and it's good peace of mind. At the secondary level, we were also able to build in an extra period in an 8-period day where we traditionally have 7 to provide internal coverage for those classes. So a staff member, certificated staff member, does have an extra period where they can provide kind of roving coverage depending on a period for any staff members who, like I mentioned, might have to go home early or arrive late for whatever reason. And we haven't had any shortages in coverage at this point, and that has been a relief in a lot of ways, because potentially I do want to caution the board and the community, and this has occurred in a number of places, and especially in Kern County, where the staff where there's not enough substitutes and not enough coverage for the classrooms, that the district is just compelled to shut down because they just don't have enough adults to supervise the classes that they need to run. And while that's a concern for human resources, we haven't realized that yet. We have the coverage available. We do have a pretty strong substitute pool, but the potential does exist. And so I do need to kind of bring that up as a potential scenario that we may have to consider down the line. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Stubbs.
Thank you. We will be hearing more about COVID-related revenue and expenditures during tonight's first interim report. And transportation has been going smoothly. We did add a 4th bus route. We've got approximately 80 students riding across all of 4 of our buses, and we're able to provide some physical distancing on those buses, as well as the students and driver are all wearing masks at all times. With regard to food services, as Dr. Wilson mentioned earlier, we are preparing to provide meal kits during winter break, and we did so during Thanksgiving break as well. And I just wanted to give a huge thank you to our Angela Baxter, our Director of Food Services, and her whole food services staff. They've been doing an amazing job in that regard. And then with regard to facilities, we are continuing to monitor inventory of PPE and preparing to restock over winter break and make sure that we've got furniture and adequate supplies and things like that for the return of students and student barriers for when students come back in January.
Thank you, Mr. Heller and Ms. Stubbs. So simultaneous instruction has been occurring for the last 6 weeks, and what that means is that the students are in the classroom and cameras are on, and students who are distance learning are logging in. And the in-person instruction has been largely successful. The live streaming or the simultaneous has been a bit challenging. Over the course of the last 6 weeks, we have spent time gathering information. As board members, you attend board meetings. You also meet with me on a regular basis, and I appreciate the time that you have given to the district over the course of the last number of months to discuss items like instruction and many other topics. So I've had a number of meetings with you as board members. We have met with union leadership, both our teachers' union leadership and classified leadership. We have also offered voluntary feedback meetings at each of the school sites where more than 75% of the teachers have participated. And we've listened to what is working and what has been a challenge. And what we heard about the students who are in person is that they're engaged and they're learning and they're making academic progress. What we learned about the live streaming and the students who are in distance is that there are some that are successful. There are some that are not engaged. They're having trouble logging in. They're having trouble following the schedule. I think Joe mentioned earlier that it was hard for him to get up sometimes when he had distance learning. So there are some challenges. And I did mention earlier that I was in all of the classrooms the last couple of weeks, many of the classrooms. And Trustee Kerr, you were with me today. Is there anything you would like to share about in-person or distance learning at this time?
You know, I want to just preface this by saying that I might get teary-eyed because it was at the primary school, and to see these our youngest students in the classroom sitting with their masks, working on their computer or doing whatever whatever the exercise was at the time, was amazing. But what was even more powerful was seeing our teachers doing what they do. I mean, they're amazing. They're amazing. You could tell that the teaching the in-person students and doing the live streaming is challenging. You could see that just because because it was just so different for me to see that, for one thing, and also they just seem to be doing it with ease, though. I mean, and that was the thing that really, I don't know. And I'm sorry that I'm just pausing with it. It's kind of what Mr. Farrell said regarding the teachers. I mean, the work that all of our employees are doing right now is unbelievable. It's unbelievable work, and and also seeing the smiley faces of our students, even underneath their masks, was amazing to see them in person. And there were some classrooms where you were able to see the distance learners on the screen as they were learning with the class and things, and it was funny because one, they're young, so they're going to be, but the in classroom students were on the class or learning, doing their thing and stuff, and then on the screen it's funny because they're like moving around, So it was interesting, kind of seeing just the difference in as far as what you're seeing on the screen and what you're seeing in person. So all I can say is that our teachers are doing an incredible job. I can imagine it's very, very challenging, and probably every day is different for them. And I give them my most highest regards for the work that they're doing right now. And not only our teachers, but also our classified staff. We met up at the office, and they were just happy to see us. We went out to recess. Everyone was just delightful the whole morning long. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you, Trustee Kerr. And when we were meeting with our teachers, what was the overwhelming sentiment was their concern about equity, and their concern about their English learners, and their concern about serving the distance learners adequately. We have high expectations in St. Helena Unified, and our teachers have high expectations for who they are and what they do and how our students perform. And so as we began looking at next steps in January, the reflection around the plan that was developed over the summer that had a continuum of phases was considered. And in addition, we knew that we needed to look at January as we had asked our parents to make a commitment through December 18th. So our next steps, and with public health guidance, Dr. Reluccio, she gave us the go-ahead. She spoke with the California public health officers, and she gave us the go-ahead to go ahead and expand our in-person instruction in January, meaning bring our distance learners back into the classroom. So all of our students are expected to return on January 6th, and we are ready and waiting for them. Last Friday, I produced a video and posted a detailed memo indicating the shift and the process that would occur. And this week, our 4 principals have already concluded contacting, at least with a message, every family that's on distance learning. And prior to January, we had about 75% of our students in person and about 25 in distance. And when we come back in January, we already know that less than 4% of our families are requesting to stay in distance learning. And that's because of one of the options that we talked about with regard in my memo, meaning their parents are essential workers and they need them to be at home. There's a valid medical note for them or someone in their home that needs the isolation. They've been displaced due to the glass fire. They're not living near us. So again, we have approximately 1,170 students in our district, and less than 4% will be staying home in January. I consider that a huge celebration, and as Joe has talked about, and many of you have seen or heard, our students are thriving in the classrooms, and it's working. And as much as we are able to continue in-person instruction, we will do so during this school year. The administrative team is preparing all of the facilities. Maintenance, custodial are making sure that all of the desks are there, the dividers are there, everything is being accomplished, and we will be ready for additional students in in-person instruction on January 6th, 2021. And at this point, staff is available for any questions you might have with regards to the in-person and distance learning update.
Any question? I'm sorry, was there any public comment on this agenda item?
Yes, there were 9 public comments submitted to our public comment email account, and those are all attached to the board meeting agenda.
Yes, and is there any current public comment regarding this agenda item?
If there are any members of the public that wish to comment on this item, please hover towards the bottom of your screen and tap on the virtual hand. If you are a telephone caller, please press *9 now.
Just want to make sure we give enough time. Okay. Board members, comments or questions?
Thank you, Dr. Wilson, for that, and Mr. Heller and Ms. Stubbs. I appreciate all that information. Does the school day look the same in regards to time come January 6th as well? Same schedule, there's no change, not a longer day or anything like that?
Correct. We are still limited to the length of day. Mr. Heller, would you like to talk about the background behind developing the schedules that you and Mr. Farrell developed?
Excuse me. Yes, so in designing the schedules, we wanted to maximize the opportunities for students to be in person and minimize the transitions while on campus. One of the biggest concerns and challenges is lunchtime, and where large groups would congregate and be together and mix cohorts essentially, and that occurs more at the TK5 level. So one of the things that we felt was critical in developing the schedule was to end the school day right around what would be our lunchtime traditionally, and it's a little bit later, around 1 o'clock, 1:10, where students are dismissed and they get a grab-and-go lunch. So that mixing, that preventing the mixing as much as we can was a consideration that we really had to focus on and continue our focus as we continue through the pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, Trustee Pelosi, at the primary and the elementary, they're eating their meals in their cohort. At the middle school and the high school, it would be almost impossible to give them the length of break they need for eating and keep them distanced. And so the grab-and-go lunch is at the middle school and the high school. And then the students are eating with their cohort peers, primary and elementary.
And second question is for lack, I think the contract, the pledge that families signed upon the return, that was clear to go through the end of the school year, correct? That families know that they still need to hold up their end of the bargain by doing the self-check at home, and even though more are returning, particularly now that more are going to be returning to
Yes.
in person.
Good question. Yes. So each of our principals have or will have before January 6th emailed the families that are returning, and in that email there will be the link to the parent information night that was presented to all parents by their principals prior to school reopening, the health and safety video by Nurse Barbara Dondero, Ms. Madrigal, the parent contracts and all of the enrollment paperwork, has that already been turned in by all of our distance learners?
Yes, that's correct. So the requirement for any student returning to school, whether or not they were in distance or in person, they had to meet the residency requirement and submit all back to school paperwork that also included the student pledge and the parent contract.
And then, of course, by way of my short videos, I will continue to remind and thank our parents for the health checking on a regular basis.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm wondering if there are any plans or suggestions for how to better serve the students who will still have to distance learn, so that we don't create an underserved minority of 11% of students who probably already have other things going on that are making education even more difficult, even without the distance learning.
Mr.
Yeah, I was going to see if Mary Allen is she still on the call?
I am still on the call, Mr. Heller. Yes, actually, Forrest, that is going to be a clear focus of ours, is to make sure that we're working with our distance learning students, more so heading towards the spring and the summer, and making sure that we're going to bridge any gaps that we can during the summertime. So our summertime programming is going to be very robust this year compared to years in the past. Plus, when we get back in January, we are going to have a targeted focus on some of our distance learners that are still going to be distant learners who were somewhat disengaged or they were struggling, and see how we can provide support within the home setting.
And if I could also add, board members, you recall last month you approved the budget, the contract for Paper, which is the 24/7 online tutoring system that is available to all students, grades 4 or 5, Mary?
It's 4th through 12th.
Yeah, all grades 4 through 12, and students can go online and access a tutor for any subject in Spanish or in English to receive support services in any one of their classes, whether they're distance or in person.
Any other questions or comments?
So with some of the public comment that we received, there was the comments about whether there's the question about whether there's going to be room in the classrooms with the increase of students. Is there going to be enough room to distance the students?
Sure. When our principals worked with Mr. Heller and Ms. Stubbs over the summer, they were working to develop a COVID capacity for every classroom with the necessary distance. And when we built the COVID capacity, we actually were able to serve all of the students at that time. You'll recall that we were not in a tier color that allowed us to go to in-person instruction immediately. So we were not able to begin instruction. So yes, we do have the space in each of the rooms. And as I visited classrooms this week, some desks were being added to accommodate the additional students coming back. And what I witnessed was the appropriate space in the classrooms. I think I answered your question. Okay, thank you.
I would like to just use this time to address some of the parent concerns that we have heard. I think it's very important that the parents reach out to their principals at their schools to find out which measures we're taking in the classroom. There's so much sanitation precautions and air scrubbers, filters, sanitation protocols that are being maintained on a regular basis by our administrative staff, our teachers, and our support staff. I think it's very important that parents who are concerned about going back to school, as we have had in our public comment, that they talk to their teachers and principals. Julio? Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to follow up on that as well, just in terms of just the data that the district is collecting and keeping on the website. I think that's reassuring as well, that we've been able to operate for 6 weeks and we've had a relatively low amount of cases. And then also too, just I understand that like right now the pandemic is surging and even in our county it is, but I also try to look at the perspective that we're in St. Helena and not necessarily that we live in a bubble, because we are being affected and there are families that are contracting COVID-19, but also too just looking at the cases are relatively lower in St. Helena in comparison to Napa. And so that also gives me, confidence that the district and the staff is doing everything within the protocols and safety, and also monitoring that situation, that we're not having a ton of outbreak. And usually the community outbreak reflects the school outbreaks, and so it's relatively low in both those areas. So I understand that it's difficult to make those decisions, and it's hard as a parent to have to decide for that, but also too I would celebrate and look at the fact that we've been able to get here thus far. And I know it seems like we've been doing so much work, and I imagine the district staff and administrators and teachers, and this is, just has gotten us to December 18th. So now it's kind of the next step, and I understand that it's going to be challenging, but also to just continue to remain following the protocols and working together to get through this. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Yeah, I think that was helpful to emphasize that we are following the protocols. We're following the protocols that are set by the state, by the county health officials. The county health officials have told us when we should close, and they've given us the percentage of positive cases. If those thresholds are met, that's when we go back into distance learning. Everyone's going to have their own opinion, but as a district, we have been following the protocols. We are following the recommendations of the county health department. We're following the recommendations of the state health department. And we have succeeded. We have succeeded in getting our children back to school in person. We've succeeded more than 90% of the districts in the state, because we are following all the protocols. We have the resources and the staff that are willing to come to school every day and do the extra work it takes to keep their classrooms clean and sanitary, and that their students are socially distanced. And we really have to applaud our teachers, our parents, and our students that we've gotten this far. So it's difficult for every one of us. It's difficult for us when we have to make these decisions that are hard decisions. And I want to thank our administration for being strong and leading us through this very, very hard, difficult time that we're all going through. We know that it's going to pay it back, and that the students this year will have a productive learning experience when they could have had a very difficult, traumatic year it has been a difficult, traumatic year. But at least they will be able to fall back on their education that they gained this year. Any other comments or questions?
one of the things that I noticed when I was at the primary school as well is just how resilient our students really are. I mean, even at the young age. I mean, masks were on the whole time. They were not, and if it was going below, they were putting it up, and it was really there was not one classroom that I went into where there was any reminders about the masks at all. I mean, they had it on during recess. It was full on the entire time, and distancing themselves as well. So they're wonderful little human beings. I mean, they really are.
Any other comments or questions? Joe, go ahead, please.
There we go. A few comments and a few questions. I'm going to start with the comments because I feel like I have not thanked our staff enough tonight. And I would like to especially thank our custodial staff. They are, wherever you go on campus, whatever campus you may be on, you see someone with a sanitizer bottle in their hand, whether they're going to refill it or sanitize a whole classroom. Our custodial staff, thank you. You are keeping our schools open. You are keeping students in the classroom. Teachers, you already know that I love you all. So my question, looking at this next steps slide, is there a deadline for our distance learning families to make their decision to send that into their site principal?
Yes, it was detailed in the memo. They need to notify
perfect.
the principal prior to January 6th.
Great.
So while the notification went out last Friday, I wanted to give parents the time that they might need if they were needed to get a doctor's note or what they might need to do. So the principals, while they will be on holiday during the winter break, they will be monitoring and connecting with families if they haven't connected. And as I said, they have primarily connected with all of the families already. And I believe there's less than 15 or less at both the primary and the elementary school that are requesting the distance model. Maybe 6 at RLS and 9 at the high school. So the numbers are very few at this time.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further comments or questions?
Is our knowledge of whether or not students have COVID or not based on self-reporting, or is it based on some system that we have in place?
Both. The Napa County Public Health Department is monitoring COVID cases across that come to them from the state level. Napa County Public Health does have a testing protocol that is currently offered to 18 and over, and soon when their new contract comes into place, it'll be 13 and over. So along with that, medical practitioners are also conducting COVID tests based on potential symptoms, and any test that is positive first goes to the state level, California Public Health, and then is reported to the Napa County or to the county in which somebody resides. The county then has contact tracers, trained individuals that begin making phone calls and contacts to determine the level of exposure that anyone, a child or an adult, may have given prior to isolation quarantine. If that's all about when the symptoms started, and they consider someone to be potential exposure 48 hours prior to that, or contagious 48 hours prior. So that's the larger arm of information and contact that we have, and Nurse Dondero and Romero are also contact tracers for our schools, specifically for our employees and our students. And we have at least one office member at each school site that is also trained to help them and assist in contact tracing. We also are asking families to keep a child home if they're exhibiting symptoms. And that may or may not be a COVID-19 case because a cold, a cough, a headache, a stomach ache, not a broken bone, but just about any symptom that you can consider for a cold or flu is also a potential COVID-19 case. So that's where self-reporting comes in. And we ask the parents to let us know immediately so that we can monitor that closely. Mr. Heller, did I miss anything with regards to the monitoring of COVID cases?
No, I think you covered the essential points.
Ready to move on? Okay. No further questions? Thank you. Thank you, all of our presentation participants. And also, again, I just really can't say enough thank you to our community, everyone in it, our teachers, our parents, and our students. On to business operations, item 14A. We have a public hearing and review of Resolution 20-15 regarding accounting of developer fees for the 2019-2020 school year. So I'll be calling on Miss Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And indeed, this is for public hearing and information only this evening. It'll come back to the board on January 21st for action. And so this is our annual developer fee report where we look at the revenue and expenditures for developer fees for the prior year. And then we also hear a 5-year overview each year too. And so if we can look at the first page of the exhibit, a little farther down. And so you can see the amount of fees that we collected in 2019-20 and the amount of interest earned there. And then the next table shows our beginning and ending fund balances, followed by the expenditures that we incurred in 2019 with our developer fees. And so we spent developer fees on 2 board-approved projects, the play structure at the primary school, and then also some roof work over at the high school. And then if we go further down, you'll see some of the lists of projects. There it is right there, which are some long-term projects that we're possibly considering. We do not plan to take any projects to the board for consideration of approval until we have a clear picture of what our property tax revenue will be like in the future. And at this point, I would entertain any questions about the developer fee report, and we would have our public hearing.
Ms. Madrigal, was there or is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There was no written public comment submitted. You may conduct the public hearing, and then I can ask for any other comments.
I'm sorry, there's a different format for this agenda item. I just, I wasn't thinking straight. I apologize. So I would like to now conduct the public hearing for the 2019-2020 accounting developer fees. It is now open at 8:53. For those of you attending our first public hearing, we do wait for an entire minute before closing the public hearing. The governing board has heard your comments and concerns, and we thank you. Anyone who has made, no one made any comments, so we thank you for listening to this agenda item. The public hearing is now closed at 8:54 p.m. Do the trustees have any questions about the 2019-2020 developer fees report?
No.
This item is for information only and the public hearing only. It will return in January for action. Next, we have item 14B, review and consider approval of the 2020-2021 LCFF budget overview for parents.
Thank you. And an annual budget overview for parents is required as part of the LCAP now. And this year it's due technically by December 15th along with the first interim report. I did contact our auditors and they indicated that it would be acceptable for it to be approved tonight on December 17th. And what this does is provide just a general overview of our revenue and expenditures for parents, and it aligns with our current LCAP and then also the budget that you will learn more about in an upcoming item this evening.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item?
There is no public comment.
Okay, and there were no written comments submitted. Do the trustees have any questions about this agenda item? Is there a motion to approve the 2020-2021 LCFF budget overview for parents as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. Item 14C, review and consider the approval of the 2019-2020 audit report. I'd like to call on Ms. Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And I wanted to extend a huge thank you to our site secretaries and also our district office staff because we had an audit with no findings for the 2019-20 school year that I'm pleased to report. Thank you. And with that, I would recommend approval of this audit report.
Is there anyone present who wishes to publicly comment on this agenda item, or were there any written comments submitted by members of the public?
There were no written comments submitted, and there are no comments from the public on this item.
Trustees, do you have any questions about this agenda item?
Yeah.
It's really wonderful that we, year after year, have an audit report with no findings. Thank you, Andy. And thank you to all the staff that supported her. Is there a motion to approve the 2019-2020 audit report as presented?
I'll make that motion to approve the 2019-2020 audit report as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have item 14D, review and consideration of approval of contracts over $25,000. I'd like to call on Miss Andy Stubbs.
Thank you. And we have 4 for the board to consider for approval this evening. The first is with AMS.net, and that would be for licenses to go along with some wireless access points, which is networking equipment that we're purchasing. And we can use bond dollars to cover these licenses because it's part of infrastructure. The second is with Dell, and this would be for some replacement teacher laptops. And currently the laptops that we've purchased are about 3 to 5 years old at this point, and we have been replacing them as they fail, as they need to be replaced. However, the delivery time on these has really been delayed, and so we want to make sure that we have adequate stock of these to replace, especially as teachers are relying on them more and more for distance learning and so forth. And so we can use our technology allocation in the general fund for this expense, and we have enough budget without having to increase it. And then the last 2 contracts are associated with our pool, which is now over 5 years old. And the first is with A&T Europe Spa, and they will perform some work under warranty. We've learned that we do have to replace our pool liner because it's bubbling in some places. But the good news is that most of the work, about $36,000 of the work, can be done under warranty. And then with this particular vendor, we would just be paying for some optional associated maintenance work, which I'm recommending that we do. And we would be charging that to Fund 40, which has our set aside for the pool liner and also the turf replacement that we've been working on for the past few years. So the budget there is more than adequate to cover this. And once this is replaced, it should be lasting for about 15 years is what they've told us. And then the final contract is with NOR for the remaining pool maintenance that we want to accomplish at this time, and this is mainly associated with replacing some pool lights. We're planning to do all this work in January, and Joe Perez, our Director of Facilities and Aquatics, is actually looking at an alternative repair method where he can switch out some lights at much less cost. And so if he's not able to do that type of repair, then the most it will cost will be the $38,210 that you see there. And so for those items, and plus the new replacement pool cover that was on the consent agenda, I'm proposing that the board approve charging approximately $65,000 to that Fund 40 set aside for the pool liner. We had anticipated a much higher cost to replace the pool liner in the out years, so we're pleased that we're getting the warranty work done now, and then hopefully it should last for another 15 years. And so with that, I would recommend that the board approve the contracts over $25,000.
Was there or is there any public comment on this agenda item?
There was no public comment.
Trustees, questions or comments?
I had one question regarding the pool liner project. On the last page of the proposal, pool draining, filling, and balancing done by others. So, and perhaps I just overlooked it, but was there a cost to refill that pool anywhere that I missed?
I would have to look and report back to the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe Perez, our Director of Facilities and Aquatics, prepared the information for me, and we looked over it in detail, but I don't recall that.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion to approve the contracts over $25,000 as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Item 14E, review and consider approval of the 2020-2021 first interim report.
Just 1 second, Andy. It's okay.
Thank you. And for our board focus this evening on the first interim report, we will take a look at revenue and expenses associated with the pandemic, and then also discuss in detail the multi-year projection. And the full presentation that I usually do is also provided as backup for the board. So the first sheet table here provides an overview of where we are financially compared with when the board approved the original budget for this year back in June. And so the key thing to focus on in this particular slide would be the row that's shaded in yellow. And so you can see that when the board approved the budget in June, the budget included a surplus to the general fund of approximately $732,000. We still have a projected surplus at the time of the first interim report, but that has decreased a bit, and the surplus is now projected at about $189,000. This slide shows some of the detail about the revenue, and what I've highlighted there would be property taxes. We had budgeted that property taxes would be coming in approximately 3% higher than they did last year, but in fact they came in at 1.86% higher, and that has to do with the impact from the glass fires and the Hennessy fire. You can also see where we had a substantial increase due to our one-time federal and state COVID-19 funds. And then the third line where we discuss state revenue, you can see a large decrease, and that has to do with our STRS on behalf. So over the past few years, we've had to start booking the state's contribution to STRS, both the revenue and expenditures, as kind of a pass-through account on our books, just for transparency's sake. So, and you see a decrease there just for some accounting that doesn't really impact the rest of our books. We see some of the details of changes in expenditures compared with the original budget, and some of the largest items there have to do with COVID-19 related expenses, which we'll talk about in the next few slides, and then also that large reduction to the STRS state on behalf calculation that we talked about in the previous slide. And then the next couple of slides bullet out for you some of our COVID related expenditures in more detail. So for example, the higher grade filters that we purchased and the air scrubbers, and even some additional equipment for food services so that they can deliver meals. All these things we've been able to apply to those one-time COVID-19 relief dollars that we've received. Here are some of the items that we've talked about. You can see the fuel education expenses and the paper tutoring expenses. Additionally, we've added some counseling hours to support students through Up Valley Family Centers, and then paid for some additional temporary custodial support to ensure that we can have our facilities cleaned at the level that they need to be cleaned under our county requirements. We've talked a lot over the years about our reserves, the general fund savings account, if you will, and we always try and earmark certain amounts in the reserve so that we make sure that in the out years we don't spend below those amounts in our reserve. And so as a kind of a typical example, in the middle we talk about operational costs. And we have a set aside in case we have any unexpected legal or special education, transportation, or food services expenditures. And then the two items that I've highlighted there, I did set aside a portion in the reserve that reflects the amount of savings the district has realized in terms of contributions to STRS and PERS, because the state has reduced our contribution requirement because of the pandemic. And so I think it's appropriate to reflect that as a component of our reserves. And then also setting aside a portion of the reserves in case we continue to have additional COVID-19 expenses in the out years without any further federal or state one-time revenue to go along with it. I'd like to talk a little bit about the multi-year projection. The district has been budgeting 3% growth over the past few years per the annual budget assumptions that have been approved by the Business Operations Committee. And in fact, in the years since the Great Recession, property taxes have increased more than 3% annually. We were projected to see some impact from the pandemic, but we were anticipating not seeing that impact until 21-22. And John Tudor, who is the county assessor and clerk, has been advising the County Office of Education and all the school districts to at least begin developing some planning scenarios for their multi-year projections that would show a 0% growth in the out years, so that we can begin planning in case that does happen. And when the glass fire hit, we were told that we wouldn't see the impact of that on our property taxes until probably the April 2021 certification, but the county determined that they needed to report at least an estimate to the state, and so we actually saw the impact of the glass fire in our property taxes with the November certification. And so we realized only a 1.86% increase compared with at least the 3% that we were expecting, assuming that we wouldn't begin to see the impact from the pandemic until 21, 22, and beyond. And as we've talked about with the board in past years, a multi-year projection is always included as part of every required report. And it's an important tool because it helps us see any potential problems in the out years as we're forecasting mathematically our current revenue and expenditures. And then to begin to develop a plan should there be a pattern of deficit spending. And deficit spending is allowable as long as the district can meet its financial obligations, which in our case at least meeting that minimum 3% reserve in every year, and as long as you have a plan to address that deficit spending. And so I've got two models that I presented to the Business Operations Committee for their support to bring to you this evening, a 2% growth multi-year projection and a 0% growth multi-year projection. So if property taxes increase by at least 2% in each of the subsequent years, then we really have a fairly balanced budget. You can see we've got a deficit of approximately $370,000 in 22-23, but if we make some temporary budget adjustments, which are listed on that slide there, that have to do with freezing the contributions to our facilities funds temporarily and freezing the set-aside for our future-ready classrooms projects, then we can really have a balanced budget and be okay. And then use some one-time reserves in 2022-23 to offset that deficit. And as you can see, we still have a healthy reserve in each of those out years. However, if property taxes come in with no growth in the 2 out years, you can see that we are faced with a significant deficit in 22-23 of about $1.7 million. And once the board has to approve the original budget for next year, that would also be including 2023-24. And so if we have zero growth over the next few years, then the deficit would grow even higher. And so these numbers are based on those same freezes that we talked about, and then the strategy would be for 21-22 and 22-23 to use a component of the reserves to offset the budget deficit. And we would also want to begin looking at some possible budget reductions to be implemented if it turns out that we need those. And of course, the hope is that with a vaccine coming and things improving over time, so will our property tax growth, and we won't need to implement any reductions. And so this is a list of the next steps. Most notably in January, we will be meeting with John Tudor, who is a county assessor, and he will have some more information for us about the impact of both the glass fire and the pandemic on our property taxes. The board has a study session scheduled in February, during which we'll be talking about budget development and enrollment options. And at that time, I would present the board with what I'm calling a dynamic deficit mitigation plan, which would combine kind of a strategic use of the reserves and then also identify some possible budget reductions to address any shortfall as needed. And then I would begin working with the Business Operations Committee to develop that plan, with the ultimate intent of bringing to the board this time next year a first interim report for 21-22 that would have that deficit mitigation plan included. And we would submit that to the county, and that would eventually go to the state as well. And so the Business Operations Committee reviewed all of this information, and they provided consensus support for board approval of the 21 first interim report with a multi-year projection showing 0% property tax growth in 2021-22 and 2022-23 with the next steps as presented. And so that indeed would be my recommendation as a way to plan prudently while also thoughtfully for the future.
Thank you, Andy. Is there any public comment, or was there any public comment on this agenda item?
There was no public comment submitted, and there are no public comments now.
Trustees, comments and questions?
Thank you for this. It's a sobering look, and I appreciate the thought that's gone into this. And my one question was when you talked about the STRS and PERS and the reduction given the pandemic situation. And I'm sure you don't know the answer to this, as smart as you are, but I mean, do you think they can turn around in like 2 years' time and then like wall up school districts with a?
Yeah, that's another.
I mean, that
That's
we
exactly
would
what I
turn
was
around and say like, okay, things are back to where they were. So, and I know I'm asking you to look into a crystal ball here, Andy, and you wouldn't know, but I'm just wondering, either historically, is that proven to be something that's happened that we need to also prepare for, to think like, okay, we gave you this little break right now, but here it comes 5 times fold in the out years.
Well, that's a very good question, and the state had been increasing our percentages by quite a bit to address their unfunded liability that they had, and so they were projected to have resolved that issue, and then STRS and PERS was supposed to be leveling out, I think, in this year or the subsequent year, and so from what I've read and heard, they have not communicated an intent to then bump it up exponentially, but to your point, they could theoretically do that at some point. Yeah, so I'll be sure to share with the board any information that I start to hear about that. Mm-hmm.
Forrest?
So you said that we can't run a deficit if we don't have a plan to fix that deficit, and I'm wondering what the requirements are for such a plan.
Thank you. And we can submit, especially because our reserves would still be adequate, we can submit an interim report that has some deficit spending, and with our degree of deficit spending, we wouldn't have to submit any kind of a plan for reductions. The county would just respond in the typical certification letter. They would probably make note of the deficit and suggest that we have a plan. So for the board to submit a first interim report next year, if we still have to show a deficit, if that's what the information that we get tells us, and also submitting to them a mitigation plan, that the county would see that and think that we had done a really good, prudent job, but we wouldn't be required to submit that.
Any other comments or questions? I just I think that coming from as we are actually in many respects an agricultural rural community, and it's just based on prudence that a lot of people still live here are based on have agricultural based farming livelihoods. When you're in farming, you plan for the off year, and I just think it's prudent for us to be conservative and plan for the 0% increase to our revenue. I think it's a very good recommendation, and I'm very comfortable with it. I would like to ask if there is a motion to approve the 2020 2021 first interim report as presented.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carried. On to item 15A, future agenda items. We're looking to the January 21st regular meeting of the board. The items that will be addressed are up on the screen. And do any of the trustees have any questions about the agenda or any subjects for future agenda items?
I do not.
Go ahead, Julio.
I'd like to suggest, just possibly for one of the future agendas is, again, I mentioned a little bit about it earlier about the work with the city that's being done. And I know a lot of the Principal Cinto and Trustee Browdy and teachers have participated in these conversations. So I think that it'd be, and actually I wanted the city assistant manager, Priya Nixon, she was actually the one that has organized and kind of spearheaded these conversations. I think that she has done a really good job, directing those conversations. And I think it would be beneficial for our trustees and district to kind of learn about the work that she's done and what the city's kind of planning to do. So I think it'd be important. I know that the district is also interested in collaborating with that work. So I think it'd be a good update for the board if we can have her or someone from the city come and talk about that.
I think that's a great idea.
I see both Jeannie and Lisa nodding. I'm very much in support of this, and Forrest, you're also in agreement. So we've
already reached out to the city manager about this topic, and we are working to find a date that will work for his staff.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. So so it might not be on the January agenda, but we are working to.
Yes, as quickly as they are able, we will have them join us for a board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. So if there's no other subjects for future agenda items, I would like to.
President Haug, if I could make a correction to something I said earlier this evening. Tomorrow is not a minimum day. It is the same schedule for all students as they've been attending the last 6 weeks. So that was my error. In the past, it typically would be the day before a holiday. They would have a minimum day. So there's no minimum day tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. And do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, parents, and thank you, teachers and staff.